Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 40th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I am your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. I have Kage in the studio with me today for our topic about class roleplay features. This topic is just going to kind of go over a concept that we brought up, I think it was last week at our stream, and it was just something that I really liked and have been thinking about over time, so I really wanted to circle back on this and talk about it live on stream, about some of the ideas we've come up with and some of the ways that we might be implementing this into our settings, and to give you guys some ideas about how you might want to do that into yourself or into your own settings. So let's go right into it. That's pretty much going to be our main topic today, and then we'll just kind of see where this topic takes us, and how many classes we can get through and how many examples we can make. So let's go ahead and bring Kage in. How you doing on this Friday?
What is happening? Shalom, my friends and neighbors. It is good to be here.
Oh, yes. Hope everyone had a fantastic week. The week is over for most of us. Some of us, obviously, it may just be even getting started. But yes, hopefully you had a good week. Hopefully you're enjoying your Friday.
Halloween. That's right. We had
Oh, yes.
now and then.
God, this one just came by so quickly. This year and last year, there's just been so much going on in life normally that like this holiday just kind of, I think it's because it's wasn't it also during the week last year?
I think so, yeah.
So I think that might be it. I think just in general with, being adults, that whole nonsense.
Too bad it is not a nationally recognized holiday and I would get it off of work.
Right? I mean, it is one of the most fond holidays. I think it is I think it's like
most people's favorite.
I think it's like number 2 or 3 officially, like in the nation. So, you would think, but whatever.
Listen, May the 5th.
Whatever.
May the 1. I'm sorry, May the 4th.
I thought you were talking about because everyone's partying that night, so you need the night, the night after.
No.
I think every holiday should come with a two-fer.
With the recovery day.
I think every holiday should come with the day of and the day off to recover. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, Christmas Eve, Christmas.
I mean, yeah, but most of us only get half days for one of those.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you're lucky. So class roleplay features. This was a topic that we had brought up, and I think it came about from you talking about Venla and your druid character that was in the D&D Discord game that we did. And you, kind of like what we were talking about with Murder Rose's personal rituals they did as a character through their campaign.
Right.
And, that kind of imbued into the armor that we talked about on Monday. So similar kind of concept in terms of Venla had certain personal rituals that she would do. Not necessarily like things that we built into the character, but they were just aspects that you really dove into as part of that character. You were obviously very into nature, and you were actually pretty much a pacifist for the most part. She was very much a pacifist.
Lightweight, yep.
And so you revered life, and when life had to be taken, it just really didn't sit well if you didn't believe it had to be. And you were also very respectful of the dead. So the situation I think we talked about was how you would accidentally, in combat, you had intended to incapacitate, but ended up killing, not necessarily an innocent, but person that you did not intend to kill. Like the death was unintentional. You were only basically acting within the defense of the party. But basically that ended up happening. And so again, as everyone was just ready to, pack up and leave and just be like, yep, that's it. That's the D&D thing, right? We killed him. Let's leave. You were like, I'm not just going to leave her here. So you dug a grave. You did burial rites, but then you did something, you asked for something really unique. So I want you to kind of describe I want you to describe that part because I want to get from your point of view again, because it's been a minute, but I know you had a really big intent on what you wanted to do because it wasn't some power, it wasn't like a spell that you had.
Right. So, and to be honest, a lot of when I was going over my custom subclass the other day, that's where I got a lot of this from. And so, when I created the Green Burial, and it's basically a way to return back to Earth what once was, to help kind of complete the cycle of life, to kind of help Mother Nature do what it's supposed to do.
But it's not a train.
It's not a train this time, I swear. But I mean, a lot of what I find is interesting about Venla specifically. Again, every time I talk about these characters, it's so weird because I feel like they are separate entities from myself. Like, they really are. And so when she's out in the world and she sees things like living and breathing, like, she feels very much connected and a part of that. That's a part of how she sees and interacts with the world around her, and she uses her druid magic, right? Mm-hmm. And so when a part of that dies, it's almost like she feels like a part of her dies, especially when it's unnecessarily dies, right? You know, like, we all have aspects of ourselves that we're pruning, right? You know, bits of ourselves that we like, that we don't like, you know. So sometimes death is good, right? Even in nature.
Right, there's a cycle, but when the cycle is disrupted, or when something is out of its cycle,
yes,
it takes it personal.
When you get a cut, you know, even getting cuts are a part of life, but still, it's an abnormal, it's a painful part, and it's a part we all have to learn how to deal with and go through. But that's kind of how she processed all of that aspect of everything that happens. Is it's like, if I can't, you know, prevent, if I can't save everyone, if I can't stop all of the death or what she perceives,
you can bring the balance back from that.
I can try and bring some center, some balance.
Hey, Cosmic, how's it going? Nice to see you.
To the world. What's happening, Cosmic?
No, that's why I allowed it, because, you know, the way I remember you had described it was that you essentially were like, hey, you know, I'm a druid, I'm in touch with nature. You know, you didn't want to, like, cast a spell or anything, but you essentially said, like, can I encourage, like, this growth? Can I make this burial plot, which was obviously disturbed soil at this point? You essentially, you know, you didn't want to hide it. It wasn't like you wanted to make it to where, you know, there was no trace of it found, but it was more of you didn't want it to look fresh. You wanted the whole site to be brought back to, you know, nature, and to a point where it is now back into balance. And I thought that was a really nice idea, especially for that setting as well, because the way magic had changed in that setting for High Point, it was actually really in line with things. So I definitely allowed it at the time. But, you know, the more that we've brought it up recently, it's just such a really interesting idea, right? Like, this idea that you can give out these special features, these again, just basically that, just they're special feats that you can give, but they're non-traditional in the sense that they're not meant to, like I said in the description of the video, they're not meant to provide a leg up in combat, or unless it's a super, super situational. They're not really designed to give you an advancement. They're not meant to progress the plot or the story. They're not meant to be plot devices, but they're meant to give your character another facet that brings them closer to, closer to bringing it into roleplay, right? Because a lot of people sometimes, you know, roleplay can mean a lot of different things for people. It can mean doing voices. It could mean being, you know, exaggerated. It could mean, you know, getting into a completely different mindset, just being somewhere, you know, being someone else. Other people, you know, with roleplay, it's things like this. It's not how you as the player are, but it's how descriptive you're being of your player. So you saying that when everyone says, hey, the fight's over, okay, we loot the bodies, okay, we're going to go into the dungeon now. And you were like, hey, can I do this thing where I do a quick burial and then I do this my magic? That is roleplay to some people. It doesn't have to be that you got into character, or you know, physically, you know, acted it out, or even just had some kind of character voice. But there's different levels of roleplay. All of them are valid. And, you know, and that's the thing I would like to encourage more people.
Is describing spells.
When
you're talking about something like your sorcerers and how they have to, like, create different things, or, like, just when you get into, like, how you do your magic instead of just I cast X, Y, and Z.
Exactly, you know, like, right? When you make it personalized to the efforts that your character would have made, right? I love it. And I think that some people have a hard time. Like, I think some people definitely, I think the biggest thing that most people have a hard time with is, like, actually acting it out, right? And that's not for everybody. It's great when you can. I don't, you know, no one minds, well, unless you're the only one in the group doing it. But, you know, for the most part, I think a lot of gaming groups are open to the idea of roleplay when you have extroverted people who are open and and willing to do that and not do it in a way that's embarrassing to other people, like, not putting other people down or not in a destructive way, right? Like, it can be fun, but not everybody can do it. But I think if I can put across anything, especially to DMs, is recognize that that's not the only concept of role play. Characters who are really, really into their character description and, would like regularly, like throughout a gaming campaign or a gaming session, change clothes just to be fit, right? Have an outfit, right? Like
my players, especially because some of them are like young teens. That's all. Let me go shopping. I want this dress. I want this.
But that's the idea, right? That's a valid aspect of role play. And if you embrace that, right, people you'll see what what people thrive on, and you can implement more of those details. But this is one of those tool sets that I think I'm going to start giving my players moving forward. And I think for the topic today, I think what we're going to try to do is we're going to go over the classes, give some ideas of some basic default, like class roleplay features, basic things that, again, without being too creative, or if you're a DM that runs a lot of games or, repeats of like the same storylines or the same campaigns, the same modules, we'll go over some like basic ones that will just be like for a generalized class. But I also want to give other opportunities or other ideas, because I think for High Point specifically, very much like what happened with Vinla, it's going to be specific to the character, right? So Venla's a druid, but her perspective of the world and of life and of respect of death is not universal to all druids. So not all druids. It doesn't make sense for a druid of the moon and stars, or the moon and sun, to have that concept, So we'll do some high level concepts of like what a classic druid would be, and then maybe dive into some subclass options. But I think once we get into that topic, it's just going to be more about what fits the character build and not necessarily what fits. Oh, they chose this and this, then that's the class feature you get.
Yeah.
But I love this idea, and I want to dive deeper into this. I want to see what we can come up with, because the idea of giving players a tool, that's customized or at least fitted to their character.
Yeah.
To get them more in the mindset of, oh, what would a character of mine be like? And again, not in combat or not in this dialogue option, but and we even brought this up right before stream. Some of these will have very situational benefits. And that's also kind of the plus, right? You don't want to add, because we all know there's plenty of things that D&D has added that no one ever uses, right? Rules or little features or things that you could do, but it's basically like how many DMs, like, come on DMs, be honest. How many all use encumbrance? Hands? Anyone? Like honestly, how many people want to bother? I know my old DM did it, and I enjoyed doing it. It was another aspect of the puzzle, another concept of once you got to having a lot of stuff. Bags of holding basically break that though. But it's I understand why you have the bag of holding, right? It's like the video game answer to all of the gear, but at the same time, there are some things that you have to approach with a general concept of, not even like, I don't want to say the honor system, but a general concept of like relativity. I'm not going to let my players carry 15 swords, 5 sets of armor, 19 shields, and 468 loaves of bread. It's just not going to happen. I'm not even going to let you carry... I'm not going to let you carry 19 health potions. It's not going to happen. Now, if those are health vials, and you go to the leathersmith, and you say, hey, out of game, you know what a shotgun belt looks like? Yeah. Can I make that? And then you put 20 vials of health, right? Bro, you're carrying 20 vials of health, and it doesn't encumbrance you, and it doesn't affect your movement. I'm fine. Right? That's thinking outside the box. Yeah. For me, that's how High Point works. I'm not going to let you just shove 20 vials in your pocket and call it a day. It just doesn't work like that.
All we want to do is make it make sense.
Like, I'm the kind of person where you wear in a backpack, fine. You have health potions in your backpack, fine. You said inside the backpack, right? With all your other shit, good. Health potions are small, they sink to the bottom. You're not pulling that out in combat. Oh, but you put it in your pouch? You can pull that out in combat. I don't care. That's how, and you've watched me do that. Like you've seen me do that as a DM, where it's not trying to be nitpicky and try to force my players into bad situations, but I will use the information that I'm given. So if a character sets their pack out, they're like, okay, cool. Because I ask you guys, like, how are you carrying your stuff? If someone says they have a backpack and a pouch, and they tell me certain things are in the backpack and certain things are in the pouch, backpacks are not easily accessible in combat. You're not taking that off. You're not rigging it around. You're not opening it up. You're not digging through it, putting it all back on in 6 seconds and still being defensive. It's just not happening. But you got something in a pouch? I can look you in the eye and reach inside my pouch and pull this out. I'm not doing this. Like there's just... It's the concept of, for me, I don't bother with those rules. I don't bother with encumbrance. I don't bother until someone tries to push the limit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's like, I think it's a lot easier when, you can make up certain aspects, right? Like for wizards, right? They always have to have spell components. Mm-hmm. I like doing things like, hey, especially like for your backstory, like, hey, you got a small box that carries all them all in there. So as long as you can carry that box on you, you can have all your components easily available. Or you have a tool belt, like a little, like basically like a little pouch or a fanny pack that's specifically for that. Those are workarounds. And then I basically assume, well, every time you've gone into town, you just go and pick up, because again, they're generalized spell items, right? They're not the fancy ones. They're not like the very odd, unique ones you have to go and buy. But I assume that, like I don't worry about like regular ammo, like normal everyday ammo, unless it's like one of those things where you only bought 3. You bet your ass you only bought 3. But if you go and basically be like, we stock. It's like if we restock and you have a full quiver, as long as the battle didn't go forever, or you have like 9 battles in a row. If you do one battle and then you guys have like eventually stopped off somewhere and hit a trader, it's going to be like, what, a gold to get a whole like quiver full of air? Like, forget about it. Unless you want something special, once you kind of have a baseline understanding of it, it's like it kind of just ebbs and flows, right? Yeah. It is, especially because I don't have a very, I would say, a high wealth or a high treasure campaign, or a world. Like High Point isn't high treasure. You're not getting thousands upon thousands of gold or gems or shit tons of stuff every time you do an encounter. She doesn't get a lot of... Well, no. She legitimately started businesses and earned money. She didn't just adventure and get a treasure. She earned some shit. Like she actually set herself up, okay?
No, Vixie's the boss. She does work. But whatever, it's fine.
Cosmic says his Wednesday group is in a crap ton of trouble. They pissed off an ancient god dragon. Or an ancient gold dragon.
Wow.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't piss off old dragons.
That's bad news bears, my friend.
So more role play. I can say this. Role play class features. RCFs. We'll just call them RCFs.
RCF. Roleplay.
Or is it class role play features? CRF. I don't know, chat. What do y'all think? Is it class role play? Yeah, it's a class role play feature. Yeah, not a class feature, it's a class roleplay feature. So, okay, so for more of these, like I think one of the ideas that we had, so like thinking of high level stuff, right? So you have the green burial, which, let's face it, the idea is that you can bury something, and it's not that you wipe it clean or make it look like nothing's there, but instead of it looking like a fresh gravesite, or if he would even just dig his hand in and put like, a rat down, instead of it looking like disturbed soil, it looks like slightly not overgrown, but it looks like it would have over time. Like you've basically allowed nature to take it over without doing anything major to it. So it still looks like there's a mound. It still looks like something's there. Exactly. It's not gone, but like grass would have grown, maybe a weed or a flower. It's not anything special. You're not getting you're not able to get like especially it depends on where it is, right? If it's underneath a log, maybe it's a fungus that grows, or some mushrooms because it's in shade, and that would make the most sense. Moist, you basically just generally grow the area to bring that gravesite back to nature instead of the fact that he had to disturb it to put it there. Now, there was discussions before about what does that actually do to the body. Like, does it decompose? And then
Right.
we were like, well, that probably, like, maybe at higher levels you can consider that. But then you start to get into, like, really crazy deals of, like, then you're stopping things like regeneration,
Yes. Yes.
or
You can't resurrect
revive.
somebody. You can't.
Yeah, and
Like,
then it's like, are you making time pass? Like, is it decaying? So there's a lot of little things where it's mostly just cosmetic. It's mostly just nature,
Yeah.
accepts that he disrupted it, and it's going to be like, oh, but this is essentially is a meal. We'll take over from here. But again, it's not meant to be like, yes, you could technically hide something if no one's been in the area for a while. You could essentially hide it, but I guess the power, you could say, only works when you're in the ritual, so you can't just cover anything up. And again, it depends on how pedantic your players are, right? These are just like discussions you would have if your players are trying to push the bounds of it. But for that particular concept, that's more of like, a ritualistic action. Not necessarily something that's going to come up a lot in roleplay, but really allows the player to connect with the character and the character to do a in-game performance. And I don't mean performance as in like the role or deception, but it's kind of like what I like to call when DMs take over and have to describe like not just a scene, or when you're walking into like a town and they have to describe everything essentially, but when there's like something that's happening, like an event that they're describing, and you're kind of just having to take a backseat for a moment. I just call those cutscenes. I like to call those cutscenes because everyone understands what you mean by that, right? It's not me describing, like, you didn't walk into a city and now that's a cutscene because I'm just describing what you see. But there's times when it's like you're talking and then someone's like, and then he barges in the door and then two NPCs start having a conversation. That's a cutscene. Until you interrupt it or until you were brought back in, I just like those as cutscenes because you're listening to the DM and you're just watching it unfold, right? That's kind of what these are for the players. Like with the Green Burial, it's like your moment to have a cutscene of your own character, but again, without benefit, like, without progressive benefit. There's a big difference. Progressive benefit is different than direct benefit. You get benefit because you get the spotlight, you get to take the show for a minute, you really get to connect with your character and do your character's thing. You just don't get a progressive benefit. The story doesn't change, but that's also not true. Let's say you do that in front of the right person and then they respect you more. So these are where in situations they should be allowed to be beneficial, but don't make them so beneficial
that you're like trying to abuse it or spam it, or and the way I look at it is you're getting a lot of depth to your character, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're bringing more to them than just a bunch of combat actions or
stat boosts.
Exactly.
So the idea that we had right before stream for the fighter.
Yes.
So, like, the fighter, you get, like, stat boosts, you get, like, certain proficiencies, and then you can get certain, like acrobatics or whatever, or, performance, investigation. You can get those boosted. But with something like a class roleplay feature, like, let's say, for the fighter, you can take one round. If you can see a blade or a weapon of choice for one round, you can figure out where it was made from. Maybe not like by who, but the idea is like as long as you can see the like if you're a sword master or if you're a dagger master, but whatever your weapon of choice is or whatever you're proficient in, if you have one round where you can see it, you can know its history or you can know where it was made. Now, is that a big deal? No, it's not going to help you in combat. It doesn't really do anything for you.
Still catch you the same way.
But if you walk up to somebody and an NPC is if you're having a hard time talking to an NPC and you make that roll and you're like, hey, does he have his weapon out? Like, yeah, he does. Like, have I been looking at it for the last minute? Like, yeah. It's like, okay, what do I know about it? And then you can have that dialogue where it's like, oh, so I see that you got that from so-and-so. They only made that for this war. But you're too young to have been there. Was that your dad's? Like, imagine being able to pull that out and then actually start a dialogue with an NPC that didn't give a shit about you. But now you've shown proficiency. You've shown intellect on their level. Now they respect you. They're like, oh, how did you know anything about that? And that's it. That's a class roleplay feature. It's beneficial in that situation.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, now, could you be a DM, a cool DM, and allow you to maybe use that to haggle? Like, maybe you're at a really high class, weapon shop, and you'd be like, the guy tries to overcharge you, and you're like, maybe you failed your deception, maybe he passed his deception check, but then you're like, can I use my other ability to like look at the sword and be like, no, I know where this was made. So that's situational, super situational. Maybe like most merchants would be like, bro, it's my price, take it or leave it. But otherwise that would be a cool thing for a sword master to just kind of be like, hey, what are these guards wearing? And then so as they're walking through town, you could take the moment, you could have your cutscene and be like, so all of these guards, they must be supplied by this guy over here, because all these swords, they're all made by the same makers. They're all made by this one area that I know of. So they must be supplied by, like, not a big deal. Doesn't progress the plot, but it's a cool little thing that your character would pick up on. It would know, and you can enrich it by adding to that, right?
So I was thinking as you're talking about a potential like class roleplay feature for a cleric where he can like bless people, but not like the spell bless, obviously, but more like you just like give somebody like, and
it's almost like a morale boost.
Kind of, almost like a placebo, but almost like not necessarily. But it's just like you get blessings. It's almost like you get good luck for the day, or maybe you get
so it's more
one to like a roll in a certain
right. So it's not like a full mechanic, but from like a peasant level, it actually does something, right? Like a peasant who is down in his luck might actually like get something like good that day, but for like the party, it's no more than inspiration or guidance.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, I give you like a plus something.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like that's what I think would be really interesting. And that's what I want to go over. Like, what can you do? Like, so we started with fighter, right? So it's like, so fighter, you could have a basic one, right? You could have, because like the good feats are, like adding attack or all of that. But think about what a fighter is all about, right? Like the skill set. So you could have a fighter can, like, you don't want it too powerful, so you don't want a roleplay feat that allows them to have an up in combat. Like, oh, I can watch an enemy, know what their their fighting tactic is, and now I have a benefit to fight them. Yeah. I think that is a very valid feat that fighters should be able to have, like a +2 to AC or a +2 to attack, based on being able to understand how someone else's fighting style is. But on a roleplay aspect, what else do fighters know, right? Like they know makes and models of things, like weapons, maybe materials that they were made out of, so that can help in just, again, general discussion and impressing people. You could do the same thing with armor. Maybe for if you have a like a subclasses, like the veteran subclass. I think there's a veteran subclass for fighter. Maybe you know more about like regiment and colors, so when you see an NPC, you can know like just a little bit more about automatically like who they're associated with.
Rank you might be or something to that effect.
Yeah, things like that, right? Like you can automatically tell rank.
I even think fighting styles in and of themselves, because a lot of people might think like monks for that, but even different, martial fighting styles, like with swords or with, bows and arrows and things like that. Like, you might be able to, like, tell where they train, what style they use, how they hold their bow.
Yeah, and you don't have to give it, like, you don't have to give combat bonuses for that.
For sure.
But you can just,
knowledge, like, or that, like you said, you can use it for roleplay purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Just get closer to people for whatever reason.
I was also thinking too for fighter, kind of like being able to have insights on people. Like, so again, it doesn't really give you anything like for lying or anything, but maybe you can like maybe you have a higher perception as a roleplay feature. Maybe you have a higher perception to things like limps or injuries. So how someone walks, how they hold themselves. Yeah. You could be like, something wrong with your arm, or like, were you in a war? Like you just, an old injury when you see it, right? And this is kind of, where with High Point, I would be a little bit more specific, because if someone put that in their backstory, I would be more lenient towards their backstory than a generalized one.
What if somebody could, oh, I see you have this aches and pain, and they know like some special trick where they just like, that Mr. Miyagi, like boom, and then he like makes it feel, and it doesn't last forever.
Right.
But it gives you like relief for like a good minute. Like I think that would be way cool.
Yeah. It's like so easy as that.
You fall asleep, sitting there in pain. Like, it could be the difference you get a long rest or not. in certain small situations, which could technically be beneficial, but
yeah,
still,
absolutely.
that's crazy.
So and this is why I want to do more customized ones, because here's one that doesn't fit with any class. Imagine just having a super fine palette as your class roleplay feature. So you have food, and you can just compliment oh, I see that you used, rosemary. It's not, blooming this time of year. So good job of keeping it so fresh for so long. Like, your preservation must be great. Like, being able to just do little roleplay things like that to again, it doesn't do anything. It's not like you're detecting poison or anything. Maybe in a very super rare situation, if it is poisoned, you'll live long enough to know what type.
You taste it and you be like, that flavor's not supposed to be here. Like, I know it's supposed to be in this soup.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the type of palate I have, I wouldn't be able to tell it's even there in the first place.
But you don't know it's poison. You're just like, is this off? Has this gone bad? So yeah, just
what's that ingredient?
Like little things like that. But who would that go to? Would that be a bard? Would that be a cleric?
That's very fair,
but that could be anyone. Anybody could have a fine palate for food. Mm-hmm. But that right there, that class roleplay feature, just fine food palette. Class roleplay feature. You can and any of these, keep in mind, any of these can be anywhere from a ritual, something that has to take in-game time and you have to be able to focus and not be in the middle of combat for. It could be a roll. Maybe, again, the palette thing could just be a percentile roll. The higher the roll, the more you know about it, right? Like, again, out of, for every 10% on a percentile roll, one more ingredient, or 10% about the meal, up to, exactly how they prepared it. Or they could just be automatic, right? Like the fighter one. It's just, if you can see it unbroken for a round or for 1 minute, you'll have the knowledge of it, right? So all of these can be delivered in multiple ways depending on your setting and depending on how you as the DM want to do these. But again, these are just supposed to be ideas to help the players connect with their characters more and feel more like, again, having that connection to the setting, making them feel living in it, right? Being able to, imagine that they had the food and now they know all of these things about it, right? And being able to have a conversation and spark that conversation. If you're the DM that can be that dynamic and take that and shift the morale of NPCs, right? Like, one of the things I think is missing now in 5e that, again, some of my second edition players will know is reaction. Reaction, I don't think, is a big deal in 5e anymore, but it used to be in second edition. And not reaction in the sense of like reacting to a situation, not like surprise. So reaction in second edition was a stat that was adjusted, and it was meant to be a modifier on how NPCs reacted to you.
Interesting.
So
like
very much,
reaction.
And it was based on your charisma. So your charisma modifier, I believe, if I haven't looked at it in a minute, but basically it was a modifier to where if you had a low modifier, people would react badly to you. Prices would go up at or again, however the DM wanted to reference it, but people would be less likely to help you, give you information. Prices would be different. The idea was that reaction was supposed to help you in dialogue options.
What kinds of things would affect this? Is this more appearance based, or is this more like reputation based?
So I believe if I remember correctly, second edition basics was like charisma based. So it was your charisma modifier, because how every like in second edition they all had a different modifier for various things. So from what I remember, charisma had a reaction modifier. So if you had a low charisma, people would react badly to you. So it was a way to kind of like use charisma to be more about your personality.
I guess my question is, like, are they reacting to you badly? I mean, it's based on your charisma modifier, but it's like, what type of reaction is it? Because
it was really up to the DM. So my DM did something really interesting. I think he actually built a custom mechanic for visual. Like he had like an actual like attraction level that was based off of a calculation I don't remember, but he kind of split it. He had a personality one, which was like based on the charisma, and then an actual like visual one. But for like second edition, I think it was meant to be on the DM. So in general, it just kind of meant that you were like crass. You were uneducated. So, like, if you were talking to a noble, you just would use bad words. You'd be like, oh, yeah, oi, mate. Like, you want to go get a beer? Like, why are you dressing fancy? Like, not knowing how to properly dress them as Your Majesty, and, would you like a drink? Can I offer you some wine? Like, you don't know how to be eloquent. Now, that's just one example. It could also be, if you want to roleplay it, as a reflection of your looks. It could be you are just grotesque and somewhat dim-witted. Mm-hmm. It's not this, because you can have a super high intelligence and a super high wisdom and have a crappy charisma. So that could come across as you're extremely beautiful and extremely highly intelligent, but you're a shit person to talk to. Because you're
super abrupt,
you're blunt.
Yeah.
Maybe you're arrogant. Maybe you're egotistical. Maybe you're just the nerdiest person who just cannot help but, word vomit on people. Yeah. So it was always meant, in my opinion, to be on the DM and the player on how they role played it, because it was a modifier based on the stats you rolled, right?
Right.
But for me, in High Point, I kind of like what you were alluding to. There are aspects of your personality that are just going to be blatant, right? So there is that normal modifier, which is just kind of how you are as a general person. Mm-hmm. But I do have things that I take into account, things like reputation, things like looks, things like what you do, how you carry yourself, and how you act can modify that. So you can even have a negative modifier, as in, by your very nature, people are just not going to be appealing to you. But if you just walked into a town and saved everyone in town from some catastrophe, and then when they say, "Oh my God, thank you, adventure," and you're like, "You got beer?" Yeah, they're going to be like, "Of course we do. We have to repay you," right? Mm-hmm. Your modifier, your negative modifier, is now pretty much a 0, right?
Yeah.
Because what you've done, they're overlooking. Yeah. So you still may be that crass, ugly, arrogant, whatever you are, that would normally turn people off. But if you're the hero who literally goes from town to town saving them, and all you ever ask for is a beer, and you're just a hard person to talk to, people are going to not care. Whereas if all you are is a jerk to everybody, and all you do is ever get drunk, you actually might get worse than that, because your reputation may precede you. And people may immediately recognize you because you obviously have a look or an aura about you, and then your reputation comes and follows and makes that even worse. So you kind of alluded to it originally of, what can modify this. So originally it was meant to be a personality / visual effect. I assume. I don't know how much visual, because D&D never really had that, but I think I think really what it came down to is your character build, right? If you have a low charisma and a bad modifier, are you going to be ugly? Or are you going to be beautiful and a bad personality, right? Like, how do you want to run how people are going to react to you?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that people have gotten super creative. I mean, you could make a bad charisma score and just blame it on your race. Be like, oh, everyone around here hates goblins, and I'm a goblin, so everyone just hates me, right? Like, there's so many ways that you can tie it into your character build in the story with your DM. I like building it. I like letting the player... Oh, there it is. There's the train.
Yay, what's up, buddy?
Really, I'm really worried that someone's gonna find out. It's that whole thing of like, oh, it's that time, huh? There's only so many trains that would be beeping at this time. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think if you're going to use reaction, or if you're going to use something like this, work with the player and the DM. I think both of them should decide what is the reason people react to you like that.
Interesting side point. So, say in a situation where I'm a character and I just have a bad reaction. I'm a hard person to deal with in general. Maybe I'm also not attractive. Whatever the case may be, I got a really, really low reaction score. But for whatever reasons, in my journey, I meet somebody, a specific individual, and we go through a really hard time together, and so for whatever reason we got a really tight bond. They know who I am, how I am, but they just don't care. Like, they see me for what I am and they're like good with it. My reaction score technically hasn't changed.
Nope.
I'm still who I am.
Yep.
But when I interact with this person, like,
they have a personal modifier, just like the town would have a modifier. The town has a modifier. Your reputation is only going to affect those who know the reputation. So we all, you've met those people who are like, oh, I have a great friend. You just have to get to know him.
Yeah.
That's you now.
Yeah.
You're the friend that they introduce as just get to know him.
Yeah,
Because
he's all right when you get to know him.
yeah, it's like yeah, he's an asshole, but he'll always have your back. Like we've been through like you could trust him. He you may not like him, but you can trust him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's who you would be, and that's where I keep in mind. Like again, if you walk into a new place, like that's why that it's the idea of like if you've done a few things and then you go to a brand new town and you try to like who I am, you know what I've done. No, and I don't care. Like you have to recognize and that's how I like to run High Point, right? I don't. If it makes sense that your reputation would precede you, that modifier happens. But how your modifier, how you get modified on those reactions would really come down to, like, what did you do to deserve the modifier? So in that particular case, that is a personal modifier with that NPC. And now, granted, that NPC now also has a modifier. They have a personal, an individual modifier to other people. But if you're around, you kind of also affect them because your relationship. So people who know them
might
you bump you up. But people who don't know them but know you bump him down.
Interesting.
Because guilty by association. So if no one has heard you speak and you walk into his hideout with him, everyone has an understanding that you came in with him. So you have a baseline with them, right? They have a respect bump. Because that's automatically a bump. Regardless of what your base is, you automatically get a bump with them. Once you start speaking, that's when they realize who you are, but you still get that, but you're here with the boss bump.
In the situation where I walk in with him and the people that we're going to meet or the people that are going to experience the reaction know us both, but separately. And so I'm down here for them, he's up there for them, and so when we walk in together and are seen together, like we're homies, does it kind of look like he goes down and I go up?
I mean, wouldn't you? Because you're like, oh, I know him. I know. Why are they... So it's like, you must not be as bad as I thought, but you can't be as good as I thought. And it really depends on who has the stronger... Again, if it's a plus 2 minus 2 situation, it's like, maybe you're not as bad as I thought, but maybe I shouldn't trust you as much. But if it's like no, that's my dude. Like that is my... Like, I trust him with my life, and you're with him? Okay, you must not... Like, he probably won't go down. But if you were, like, literally... Like, if you were like, oh my god, like, no, you don't understand. Like, he killed my servant, he burnt my crops, he's done all of this, and all you have done is were recommended by somebody... You know what I mean? You would highly... He would start to... Now, that... Like, again, rare situation... But that would cascade. The fact that you are so negative and this person is only positive because they came by recommendation, that could even cascade into screw you, screw the person that recommended you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And those, so again, kind of some insights to y'all about how
that's very true.
But these are insights on how I run High Point, right? When I talk about like the butterfly effect, when I talk about when you guys interact with High Point and as you play, and I have when I talk about those times where I have to go back and I have to figure out what that means.
Yes.
This is what I'm talking about. If you had a negative score and walked in with somebody who was recommended, and you are so bad to this person, that is going to cascade to the person that recommended them, right? That relationship will now be strained. Nothing may happen right away. They may not immediately contact them and chew them out. But the next time I think, oh, there's going to be a job. Oh, I have those two people that could, oh, wait a second. Nope, that relationship's strained. That won't happen now because he'll tell them to fuck off. So I have to find out a new way to explain something or get something done in my world, because one way I could have explained it can't happen anymore. And that's one of those reasons why it's hard to come up with examples when I tell my players, like, everything you do has an effect, but this is exactly one of those. That little cascade of coming in with the wrong person can affect more than just that situation. We have some stuff from chat real quick, and then we'll get back into the class roleplay features. But Cosmic's back with some more of his Wednesday gameplay. So he was asking if he told us about the verbal components / roleplay quotes that he has planned for the 3rd level spell Elemental Weapon.
This actually is playing into what we were talking about, because this is basically his version of kind of like we were talking about with the sorcerers.
Right.
This is his way of, like, he's got specific verbal components for each one of the different
Oh,
elements
this
in
will
this spell.
this will be great. We're gonna read this because then I'll piggyback off of this with one of my favorite podcasts that did something similar, and I want to talk about that because it ties into these roleplay aspects. Good fucking topic today. Good topic today. Okay, so it's a spell that infuses a +1 bonus with elemental damage. Okay, so this is the one that we talked about, right? We talked about this on stream. This spell.
I don't think this is the magic missile one.
Oh, this isn't. Oh, this isn't. That's elemental barrage.
Yeah,
that's right. Elemental barrage. Okay, so this is different. So, as a +1 bonus and elemental damage type chosen between acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. They only have quotes for fire, cold, and lightning damage types. Okay. Oh, this is going to be such a good topic. I really want to talk about this. So, fire. Oh, great forge, imbue this blade with the memory of your million burning embers. Manifest. In Flaming Strike.
What is that from? Manifest. There's an anime that uses that as one of their like things when they power up their like weapons or something. That's gonna bug me. That's gonna bug me. If you know what that is, Cosmic.
And then cold, frozen glacier, from ages of old, awaken the memory of winters long past within the cold steel. Manifest, chilling cutter. This also just gives me vibes too because I did steal some of the mechanics from Bleach in terms of the weapon progression.
Oh yeah,
like how Bankais work.
Yeah.
And how they actually have multiple layers. Of unlock, and then they actually these ones only come when you have a powerful enough weapon that also is sentience. Like once it becomes powerful enough to have sentience, and it basically works the same way. Is you have to work with it. Once you can work with it, learn its name, you can activate its first step, and as you work with it, you can actually unlock all 3 levels, which basically is you and it fusing your powers. Essentially, whatever is your like source of power.
Can you describe that one more time for me?
What?
So. Once you get a weapon that it becomes powerful enough in whatever way.
So certain way. So yeah. So items in my realm, items that get to a certain magical enchantment level, have a chance to become sentient. Basically, the magic infused within it can develop its own sentience.
Okay.
And this kind of goes along with like the mantle concept. It's very, very low level like mantle creation.
When you're talking about enchantments, what do you mean?
So it's like when you have a sword +1, +2, +3, like when it has that plus magic value, once it gets past 5, 5 is the bare minimum that most weapon enchantments would need to have to hold an sentience, but they won't. Those are created. You can create a sentient item using a +5. But after a weapon has gone past that, by whatever means, enchantment, divine intervention, natural creation, once it goes basically beyond 5, every level beyond that, +6, +7, +8, it has an increasing chance of developing a sentience, its own sentience. So a level 5 is the first level you can put a sentience into. After that, there's an increasing chance that the item itself will develop a consciousness, will develop its own sentience. And then when those are either A, powerful enough, or B, have existed long enough, hence back in the day when they were all created, because the time frame of High Point, if they've been around long enough, gain enough power, and have enough control, essentially they become the equivalent of Bankais, where they are magical weapons that if they are willing to work with you, you can create a bond. That bond will then allow them to unlock, because they don't have control of themselves, right? But they have these layers of power that can be unlocked. So it's a bonding issue that they can't unlock it all, but they need someone to bond with, but they also need to like you. So it's a whole thing that I really liked. I loved that concept. That was one of my favorite things from Bleach, is just all of the personalized.
So I found this guy on TikTok a while back, and he just would have this whole series of what if X, Y, and Z character had a Bankai. He did one if Goku had a Bankai. He did one if Captain America had a Bankai. He did one if all different kinds of people in anime and pop culture history.
So I also tied it in because I wanted this concept, how I built the concept. So more insight, guys, on how I layer these things, right? Because like I was talking about, or you weren't here, but like I was talking about last week on how to implement pop culture references, right? Like my method is, don't make it too obvious, but make it loose, make it feel relevant, and make it feel loosely related, make it feel familiar, but keep it on track.
Yeah.
So this is what I took for mostly for Bleach. I took a few things in terms of how some of the hierarchy works in the divine. Took a little bit of that, but just generalized stuff. But the Bankais I took from Bleach, but the way I designed their progression of how I created them, I also took a little bit of influence from Soul Eater, the anime Soul Eater.
I did watch Soul Eater. I got to a certain point in Soul Eater.
Because at one point I wanted to make them two separate things. And in a sense I do have a couple situations where it's not like generally where anybody can do this, but I do have a couple instances where weapons can turn into their personality, like their sentience can actually manifest.
Right.
But that's not the norm. That's special situations where those Bankais have essentially done what the Soul Eaters can do, the Soul Eater blades, where they can turn into their things. And they're not the same reason for like the Soul Eaters, where they're not designed for that purpose and going after witches and all of that. Right. But the idea of the progression of you had to feed the weapon in order for it to get stronger, like the whole concept of Soul Eater, I took that concept of feeding the weapon and blending it into how would I make these Bankais, because I didn't want created Bankais, right? Because the idea of having a sentient item that's created already kind of exists. I wanted the Bankais in High Point to be their own. So that's where I kind of blend this idea of imagine these magical weapons, these uber powered magical weapons that have been around for ages, that by the different, adventurers, the different kings, the different conquerors that have held them and wielded them and have, drawn blood and have infused them with magic over the eras. Imagine now that they've come to know themselves as their own personalities, and now people can pick them up, and these personalities push them and work with their own magic and their own abilities. It was a really fun concept to work with. We're getting off topic, but such a fun concept to work with.
Okay, so it's all right. I need to make a note somewhere for some things.
Make it in the Discord, in the Steam thing, and we'll make another topic of it.
For sure.
Okay, so Cosmic goes on to say, so all of which, so out of all of the quotes, so all of which, while slowly using 5 feet of movement towards the hostile creature and dragging your hand across the weapon's blade to imbue the elemental essence into it. Okay, so you're actually walking forward. I like that touch. The fact that you're actually you're not just standing there, just doing it in place. Mm-hmm. The idea that it's actually a movement-based ritual or a movement-based casting, that right there is something that's not even underutilized. I don't think I've ever seen that in a traditional D&D spell. The idea that you're actively moving. I know that D&D has mentioned you can cast certain spells while walking. It does have mechanics for being able to cast while walking, but the idea right there, all of which while slowly moving 5 feet, the fact that that this action takes you walking forward. You don't just unsheath it and it's happening. You act. I don't know. That's dope. So, I like that.
So, oh gosh, see, I hate stuff like this because now I have in my mind, I've thought about it before because Monk is cool. But I've also thought about redoing Monk a little bit. But I love this idea because imagine if you've played any of those old school fighter games, how you get people combo locked, doing different things like that. I imagine okay, this concept of having to move to cast a spell. What if instead of just having to move to cast a spell, you had to do certain successful consecutive strikes, and then once you complete those successful consecutive strikes, some other magical effect happens, right?
Bro,
you could do some crazy combos. You could go into
Monk subclass. Check it out. Check it out. Monk subclass.
What's the problem?
Spellcaster. But either one of two things. Either this is how you cast all your spells, or you're a monk and you can spellcast however you want to do that subclass, right? However normally you would get spells. But on completion of a successful combo, like, like this, like on a successful combo, you can cast a spell without using a spell slot. As long as you still have that spell slot open, right? Like if you were totally empty, you have none. But let's say you have all your spell slots open and you're able to go like, do, like 5 hits in a row. That 5th hit successfully, you could also freely trigger any spell in your that's still available to you. So just and then lightning strike, right? Like that would be a cool subclass, but you would have to do like, if you have multiple hits per round, you would have to be like, so every 2 rounds you have a chance to get a free spell off. But you have to you have to hit 5 times, and on the 5th hit your spell would go off.
I'm trying to decide whether
because the idea, how you explain it is with every hit, because you know how Monk's all about life force, like Ki. Mm-hmm. Every hit, you're stealing just enough to charge the spell. And that's why if you break the cycle, if you break the hits, you don't charge it properly. But with every successful strike, you're siphoning just enough. I kind of like that. You're siphoning just enough to charge the spell. And then what you can do is at higher levels, like the higher the combo for the higher the spell, right? So if you get like 3 attacks per round, on the 5th hit, you get a level 1 spell. On the 7th hit, you get a level 2 spell. On the 9th hit, you get every 2 hits. So essentially, you're basically saying like it's 3 rounds in a row that you have to do this, right? So you basically, to get like a 5th level spell, you'd have to go 4 rounds with never missing on one target. And again, that would be the other thing. It has to be on the same target. So you couldn't kill it and then just switch targets. But imagine that's how you balance it, right? You have the ability to cast free spells as long as you can not miss.
I'm saving this episode. We're coming back. What are we in right now? Whatever. It's fine.
We are exactly 1 hour in.
1 hour in.
1 hour in. Okay, let's get back to that. So yeah, no, but again, I thank you, Cosmic. I love this idea that again, you just, those little things can add so much enrichment to a thing. And even though it's not much, like in combat, someone could bitch and moan, oh, it's I didn't want to move 5 feet, but it's like, then don't do the fucking spell. But it's not, I don't see it so much as a action economy thing. I just look at it as like a visual effect. Like you're on the battlefield and you just take a moment to like take a step forward. And again, in High Point, stuff like that matters. I love it when people don't just be like, I just attack, right? Like, that's fine. I don't care if you just attack. But when people want to put that extra performance into it, when they talk about how they're going to hit the player, the enemy, when they talk about how they're going to dodge or something, I don't mind adding bonuses to opportunities like that, right? Whether it's an extra to AC or an extra to hit, extra damage, or in something like this, in a battle that's not quite turning out, for the enemy. If all of a sudden in the middle of the battle, some dude stops, turns to like the big guy and just walks forward and lights his blade while he's walking in the middle of like combat, I will take that, and actually that'll turn the morale of the party, right? Like the enemies. I love playing with morale in combat. I think it's very underutilized. I know it's in a lot of the DMGs.
I very much agree.
And I don't ever hear DMs talk about using morale in combat, but it is something I am constantly aware of. Like when I set up my encounters, when you guys first interact with the encounter and see who you're up against, I have a set idea of where their mind is, right? What their job is, why they're here, why they're attacking you. So. Are they cocky? Are they aggressive? Like, you may not see it. I may not act it out to you guys, but I have in my head what every single enemy, where they're at in their head. And I like to keep pace with that, not because it might not come up in combat, but if something were to happen, if you guys were to do something spectacular, I want to keep that in mind about where these guys are, right? Like, if you guys are fighting, if I just like, okay, you guys are fighting some desperate people, they are literally starving, and they were literally promised a year's worth of pay. They are not going to stop no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? But you got some guys that are like, oh, they're just going to send their hirelings after you. These are like 1 years, right? These are like guys who pickpocket for a living. And then all of a sudden, you do one of those things where you're like, I gut this guy, and then I hold up his, lifeless corpse in front of his buddy. Those dudes are fucking running away at this point, because they're like, no, I didn't sign up for that shit.
Exactly.
And that's me, though. Like, I didn't go into that battle going, there's a 10% chance these guys run. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that. But what I do is these are initiates. These are first years, and they're cocky. They think they can do this, but they've never been in a real fight. Not like you guys. I go in with that. That's all I know. Because as the tide turns, all of a sudden, if you guys armored up and shit are making shitty rolls, missing them left and right, I'm going to make them more cocky throughout the fight.
It's like, oh, these guys ain't nothing. Oh, we got this. Oh, this is gonna be easy.
And I don't know if I don't know how many DMs do this, but I constantly change my combat tactics and methods as if they were making decisions in real time, right? Like, I personally don't like pre-planning an encounter where it's too planned out and it's too much. I know I'm going to go after this person if they're weak. I'm going to do this. Like, for me,
unless you're like legit planning an ambush.
Yeah, like there's a difference if that was pre-planned by the things. But for me with combat, it's, it doesn't make much sense to metagame the combat, right? It's just on either side. I don't like my players doing it, and I don't like doing it. And adding that for me, adding this concept of morale, or at least not even morale, it could just be agenda. Just the idea of knowing what's behind this encounter, where the enemy's mindsets are, helps me allow my players to shift it, right? Because like I'll have these initiates who I'm like, okay, they've been trained, they're gonna do roughly this. Let's say you guys start rolling ones and like really fuck up and they get cocky. Maybe I'm not going to stick to the original plan. Maybe I'm going to let him do something risky that he wouldn't, or that I didn't plan for. You know what I mean? Maybe this one guy only has 2 daggers and he's fucking your shit up with these 2 daggers. And then all of a sudden you guys roll some ones and he's like, pathetic. And he's like, hey, you. And then he tries to throw a dagger at one of your buddies just for shits and giggles and then misses. And then all of a sudden next round he misses with his 1 shot. And then you get a crit. Like, normally he would not have thrown the dagger. He had no reason to, and he wouldn't have in a normal fight. But if I let them be cocky, and you guys are starting to look like you're losing, I'll throw in shit like that. Because in the moment, it makes sense for him to think that he doesn't need to bother with you.
This is a character idea. But, like, if there was a character who had, say, what do you call it? I think it's like minor illusion where you can like make like little whispers appear in somebody's ear or something like that. Well, say we're in combat and I want to mess with this person, and so I'm fighting this person one-on-one, and I let them hit me. And every time I do, I whisper in their ear, "Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you can take this guy out. Oh yeah, you can kick this guy." And I keep egging them on, and I'm letting them hit me. I'm letting them look like they're kicking, and I make it look like I'm hurt more than I am.
Yeah. You just totally play it up.
And you play it up hard. And then when they feel like they're on top of the world, then you just flip the script, and then their morale just goes from here, and then they hit rock freaking bottom, like to drop them real quick. Like I think about stuff like that, just messing with somebody to completely flip the tide, and especially if that person was like the leader and they were like, and then everybody else sees their leader getting confident and then cocky and then dropped in a second. Oh yeah,
and see, I would love to take that into account. Like stuff like that to me makes combat more fun once players catch on. And again, I don't do it to where it's like it's not like every time in a battle if there's a big bad. And his minions, if you take him out, they all run. It's not. Yes. I don't like that mindset, because if if you're gonna go into with that mindset, obviously, I'm not just gonna like pander to that. But knowing that you have not control, but there is the fact that there is that dynamicism, things like that can occur. I think once you throw that into your gaming sessions, I think it can add more excitement, because people are more willing to take risks. Because again, I don't do this, it's not so much trying to save you guys, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to win this battle, so I'm going to let him throw away one of his weapons. I meant to hit and most likely kill the other teammate. And that might, that could have been it. It could have been a crit on the other teammate and killed him, and then he could have killed you right after. It's not so much that I'm like, oh, I want to make it easier. I wouldn't do that just to make the fight easier. I would only do that in a situation where it's like, okay, everything, this particular character in this moment would be this cocky, and the only thing he can do to show his cockiness would be to do a ranged attack. But it wouldn't be from the point of view of, oh, you guys are about to TPK. He throws his weapon away.
Yeah.
I know some DMs would be caught doing that, and it's just, it sucks, because it's like, how else do you? That was maybe a bad example, but the idea still stands. Of, I like doing that, and I think that it allows for, when you show players that if you're just gonna, you hit, okay, then they hit you. You okay, roll the damage, blah blah blah. But if you start taking risks and doing things and making these outward things, and you see that it affects combat, it's like, You see what I mean?
It's you
It's
interacting with the world.
And it's always what I tell my players. The more you interact, the more you get from it, right? Like, even if it's something where it's like, if you have an ability, like an artificer, can like kind of like charge a weapon. And let's say he has a weapon that glows when it's charged. Just imagine just doing something where you just go, like if you just wanted to be cheeky, right? Like it has nothing to do with it. All it is you just, do it as a bonus action. You just charge the weapon. Mm-hmm. But imagine in the middle of a fight, you just yell out by the power of Grayskull and then you just charge it. But the idea, right, is the fact that you did that for the comedic relief of everyone in the room, or you did it because that's your character. He's just boisterous and just wants to do that. Those are those moments where I'm going to reward that. And my reward is the effect it has on the enemy, right? It's not going to I'm not going to give you bonuses for doing the very, bonus action you get as an artificer. But by adding that flavor, like, that's dope, right? Like, jumping down behind enemies and screaming at them to startle them, it will affect the mood of combat, right? They may not be as aggressive right out the gate because I'm going to give them a round or two to compile themselves. And then all of a sudden they might be suddenly more strategic. And it may feel like, again, the combat suddenly shifted. It's like, but what happens? Like, think about, like, what's gone up to that point, right? I'm not shifting combat because I'm like, oh, this fight's too easy. Suddenly I'm going to be harder on you guys. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking at it from the point of view of what did you do to them to start the fight and where are we now? And what are they doing to, I don't understand the idea that if you have an idea as a DM on how to run an encounter, mm-hmm. and if it's not going the way you want, why wouldn't you change up your tactic? Like, those characters in that fight, in that setting, would absolutely change. You know what I mean? An archer who's up on a specific, point out of the way, who's taking, you guys out, if he sees half his team get annihilated and you guys moving forward, that archer is not going to sit there and still pummel you while you take out the other team members and then watch you just walk up to him. You know what I mean? Yeah. That archer's going to be long fucking gone. Or he's going to get as much distance and pop shot you as he runs. Mm-hmm. There's no way that he's just going to sit in that spot until you're only 5 feet away and then he decides to move.
Yeah.
Or decides, nope, dagger time. You know what I mean? Because you've broken the distance. So I'm an archer, but you got too close. Darn, I guess I have no choice. Dagger. You saw him coming up. That a good archer would never go hand to hand. A good archer would have been as far back and constantly as far back as he could be. So those are those, like, again, little things like that where making it shown that the more that the players put in, the more they can actually get out of it outside of just making the rolls. I think can just make combat a lot more fun, and even for the DM, for me, it makes it a lot more fun. Just thinking about what the enemies are thinking, like looking at the combat from their point of view. Why are they doing this? If they're just hired people, it's kind of more fun to think about like how scared or how cocky they are when they're watching you guys in the fight, right? Because you guys will even kill like a couple of them, but you'll do it in ways where it's like, was that impressive, or was that just unlucky for my team? And I've done that where like the enemies, they're just sitting there like, I don't know whether to be scared of these guys or scared of my training. Like what? like
like these stormtroopers just missing every freaking shot.
They're like, just that bad? It's like, or is it our guns? Is it them? Are they moving? They're like, no, they're sitting there. But then, like again, it's one of those things. It's fun. I feel like if you approach encounters the way that they were planned and you stick to it too much, I feel like that's where a lot of frustration happens when things don't go to plan, either on the party side or on the DM side. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it feels like something's being shoehorned in too much instead of the dynamicism, right? Like. Another example, I've had players halt combat. Like, combat started, initiative was rolled, and it was like their first initiative, and they were like, do I have to attack? And I'm like, no, you don't have to. I'm like, can I like try to stop them from attacking? They're like, well, what do you mean? So she tried to start a dialogue after combat had already initiated, right? Like, but most players don't think that way, right? Most DMs are like, nope, it's combat, initiative was rolled. But it's like, no, she totally turned the tide. And I think she grabbed one of them because she was close enough. She's like, well, can I like grab them without hurting them? But she did the whole basically thing where she like grabbed him, basically put him in a chokehold and put the knife up to him, and then basically told the other one, stop or I kill him. And I was like, they're just bandits. And they're teenagers. So I rolled, and I was like, he asked what do you want? And then combat was done. That was it. Like, initiative was over because they weren't going to fight, and I was just going to roll a new initiative if she started again. Mm-hmm. But she talked her way out of it after initiative was rolled. And it was like, that was brilliant. I wasn't expecting that, but it was fucking brilliant. And I was like, yeah, he totally puts his knife down. Like, he's not going to let his buddy just get his throat cut just because they were trying to get your pouch. Like, you know what I mean? These guys aren't dumb. They're like 19 years old. They're punk kids. Like, they're not going to die for 2 gold. They were just trying to, like, go after a girl in the forest. Like, chill. Like, so, but the creativity of, do I have to fight? Like, can I de-escalate? And I like doing that. I like finding alternatives. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be all just kill everything. You can non-lethal. I like fights where you try to take them out and maim them. Like, hey, can I, if I have 2 attacks, can I, like, feign one attack to get them off guard and then use my other attack to, like, get the back of their knee? So I incapacitate, like, basically they're not at 0 hit points, but they ain't going to move anymore. You know what I mean? That could turn the tide of battle, and maybe at that point the dude's going to just be like, I give. I'd rather not die. Like, I'm obviously not going to fight back now. Like, those little things like that, I think, can make more fun. And same thing for DMs. Changing the intent. Kidnapping the party, knocking them out, or only going after one of them. Like, maybe they were only set to kill one of you and the rest can live. Little things like that, I just add more than just, here's a group of things that need to die.
The concepts that I remember, and this is slightly different. It's still very combat oriented, but an idea of called shots.
Oh, I love called shots.
I want to create a really good mechanic for that, and like I don't think I found like
so
mine that I enjoy.
Mine is it depends on severity. On a very, very rare occasion, it can be as low as 17, but basically, depending on what you're asking for, it's an 18 plus. It's always an 18 or more on a D20. So if a called shot, regardless of what you would roll, would require an 18 or more on a D20. So no modifiers, just flat roll to get a called shot. And the higher the called shot, like the more devastating or the more complicated, it bumps up. So if you're just like, I want to go after their knee, 18. That's a called shot. Either you want to, if I want to like, if you want to go after a rib, that's a called shot, 18. Body mass kind of ideas, 18. You want to disarm him, you want to take out his hand, 19. You want to decapitate him, 20. Yeah. You want to take off something like, so the more precise, the more likely, like again, decapitation, I'm fine with it. If they're not wearing the right type of armor and you have the right type of weapon and you want to make the called shot, I'm fine. But it's going to be a 20.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot easier. And usually called shots, if you don't roll it, you don't hit. Like it is a it's a hit or miss. It's not like you still get to roll AC or you get to roll to hit after you miss. It's not like a double hit.
Now, what about something like, say if I had somebody grappled and like I had their like arm or their wrist or whatever, and I wanted to.
So when it comes to situations like that, it all depends on the amount of grappling. Like if the person is basically like fully completely restrained, it's more of a role play option to be like, I'm gonna cut off his finger. So you and your 5 buddies who are holding him down, you're just gonna walk up and there's no roll to hit there. But if you are like putting him in a headlock and you want to like slit his throat, well, putting someone in a headlock and then coming in, you're only one hand holding them, they have a chance to escape. That's kind of more of like a grapple option. So yeah, depending on the thing is, like if someone's holding them but they're moving, you'd still have to roll to hit if you weren't the one holding them. But severity, right? The more they're restrained, the more likely you're going to have an option to do exactly what you want. But yeah, that's my rule of thumb with called shots. Makes it really easy. Is it's basically an 18, 19, or 20 on a D20, no modifiers, hit or miss. And I judge the number based on what you want. So again, general body shots, generalized, easy, but not just I want to hit them, but I want to do a specific type of damage, usually an 18, or a specific spot of damage. The more precise, like limbs, disarming hands, want to go after a knee to incapacitate them, things like that, 19, and then like death blows, dismemberment, those would be a 20. And then there's like a rare occasions where, let's say by some proficiency or feat or by some knowledge you gained, someone's weakness, like a weakness spot, depending on like what kind of weakness they have. Like maybe they have a broken rib, so what side to hit. That can be as low as a 17 on occasion. Or in cases where, like you said, like they're grappled or, it's from behind. So you just like, you want to like take out their spine. Like, so when it's a little bit more obvious that you're going to be able to get it, but there's a chance you fail, that's where like the 17 would come in.
Yeah.
And again, it really just depends on the chance of failure, right? Like, again, if you're going where you can't really like miss, like the guy's right there, all you're doing is just stabbing him in the back, but you're like, I want to do a called shot for his spine. Well, that's not really a hit or miss. You know what I mean?
It's
like
either you hit the spine or you don't hit the spine.
Right. But that may be where there's like, yeah, just roll a 17, and if you miss, we'll still do some damage. Like you'll do normal like roll damage. But if you don't roll 17, it's not like you're not going to hit. Like that situation, you were going to either role play it or you were going to call shot for a spot.
And again, not to get too far off the topic, but
Too late.
I know, right? How do you do stuff like coup de grace, like somebody's like sleeping, you want to like just assassinate them in their sleep?
Stealth.
But do you allow them to do like a one-hit kill no matter what this dude's hit points are? Like they got like 300 HP, but I'm like,
it's situational. So like if you go for a full like throat slit, why would someone with 5,000 HP versus someone with 1 HP? How are you gonna
survive that?
Yeah, how are you gonna survive that? Doesn't make any. It doesn't. Exactly. It's like fall damage, right? I look at it the same way as like there's a point at which fall damage doesn't make sense to cap it, and it doesn't make sense to keep adding to it. There's a point at which it's just fucking death.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's just a point at which damage die doesn't make any sense. When it comes to something like that, when it comes to a killing blow, it's the same as if they were awake, right? It's all situational. If someone's like bound, drugged, or whatever, it doesn't matter if they're the BBEG. If you have them completely incapacitated, it's not like you got to saw their head off before they're dead. Like a killing blow is a killing blow. Remember, and this is why it's also important to talk about the concept of what you as a DM look at HP as, because a lot of people just, I think, instinctually relate HP to physical health.
Yeah.
It's physical damage. It's the amount of physical amount that you can take, the damage you can take, the blood you can lose, which doesn't make sense when you're fighting someone with a dagger, a sword, or fists. You know what I mean? Why is it that I could take 2 punches but 19 stabs? How does that make sense, right? Just because the guy with the dagger always rolled 1 for damage, and so I have 20 health. Whereas the guy who punches, he's a monk, and 2 punches did 10 damage each, right? Like, how do you describe, how does that make any sense when you look at it traditionally?
Yeah.
Which is why with High Point, HP is a concept of, it's more of a concept of like your fatigue and your ability to basically survive. So, like traditionally, they've always described, like the books would describe HP as like if you punch, like most NPCs have 1 HP. Like most peasants have 1 HP. You can punch for more than 1 HP. Mm-hmm. You don't punch NPCs to death.
Yes.
You can just punch an NPC and role play and they're fine. Mm-hmm. Because hit points are designed to represent someone in mortal combat, defending themselves to the death with every intent of pushing themselves until that person's no longer moving or I'm no longer moving. And that mindset can push you to do a lot more than you normally would, right? Like the idea of the adrenaline, the idea that your survival instinct will allow you to push yourself, but that also means it's a different type of fatigue. The concept, that's why, the concept of short rests and long rests matter. Like, it's not a rest as in, all your cuts and bruises and, they just magically heal. Yeah. That's when you think of HP as damage-based and physical. But when you think of a short rest, why does a short rest work? It's because you slept, because you relaxed, because you just spent, like, literally 2 straight minutes lifting 5 pounds of steel over your head every 10 seconds because you took 15 body shots even through armor. Remember, just because someone doesn't hit your AC doesn't mean they didn't hit you. It just means you didn't take damage. That means they hit your armor, it glanced off, or your armor did what it was supposed to do. But believe me, hold up a sword and have someone wail on it with a stick for 5 minutes, your arm is going to be more sore than if you just held it up. Period. End of story. Just taking those beatings, even though it's not changing the weight, but just the shock value of what your arm goes through without taking any direct damage, that's what HP is. HP, it's almost as if you could even have a global -1 HP per round for everyone involved. You could even do that and it would still make sense.
Yeah,
because
spending energy just being out there.
And that's my idea, is like HP isn't just purely how many hits you can take. It's everything, right? Which is why I have my wizard class, which is basically you can keep on casting beyond, the normal stats, but it dips into shit like that. It dips into your fatigue level and your ability to stay awake, because it's not physically harming you, it's not killing you, but it's taking away your ability to survive, which is mostly consciousness. So that's why wizards can continue to cast even far beyond their limit, but every time they do, they get brought closer to exhaustion and brought closer to passing out, because they're actually using up more than they can do, right? So that's, when it comes down to what you said, like coup de grace stuff, like just annihilation moves, they're always possible in everyone that doesn't have some sort of reason to explain it away. But a death shot is a death shot, regardless of how many HP you have. Your ability to stay alive in combat is only that. Your ability to stay alive in combat, right? Like, when you hit someone with a high amount of HP, when your attack hits and you do a good amount of damage, that doesn't necessarily always equate to you broke skin and made them bleed. It just means that the strike you did, the first one you did that missed, basically hit the center of their chest plate so broadly that it shock absorbed. Nothing happened to them. But the second one you did hit right where the buckle was. That hurt. That maybe pinched some skin. Now every time they move, that hurts. Just it's not enough to make them stop. It's not enough to maim them. But every time that side of their body moves, there's a bruise there. Imagine doing that for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, you guys know what I'm talking about. You get bruised, and every time you move it, you're like, it's not that I can't move, but that just irritates me. Now imagine that in the fight. And then imagine another bruise. And another bruise, right? When you don't look at HP as cuts and blood, when you look at it as, oh, you didn't physically damage him, but you broke a piece of his armor. Now he just can't keep fighting as well. That could be the concept of HP loss. Right. Because eventually that armor is going to make it to where he can't be effective in his fight. If you look at HP from all of these perspectives, it's not just someone looking fucked up. And granted, D&D didn't do us any favors when 50% was bloodied, because now you assume that they're just like, bloodied. Yeah, and that's the problem, where it doesn't make sense when you look at it from that point of view, especially if someone's wearing all plate mail. They're not bleeding. Plate mail's not bleeding unless you pierced it. But they're battered and bruised. Guaranteed they got some broken bones. You can break a bone through armor. You hit hard enough, you can break bones through armor. You will never have to penetrate skin to hurt someone. And that's just it. Like, I think you got to carry all that armor. You hit someone in the legs a couple times. Like, in that battle, DMs aren't talking about where you're hitting. You're just saying, I hit them, right? It's up to everyone else to decide it. But if you're imagining yourself just wailing right here on their thighs, even though they're fully armored, they're just not going to be able to walk eventually. Like, eventually, they're just going to... They can swing all day long, but they just can't stand anymore. You know what I mean? Like...
Because I've even seen people, like, would you allow, like, a monk to do that intentionally? Like,
yeah.
Hey, I'm doing my kicks. Like, every single time I throw a
100%.
kick, I'm kicking that leg and that spot.
If you did that, I would 100% not only allow it, I would give you that bonus. That the movement would start to go down on that enemy, and their fatigue, basically their hit points, would also go down in retrospect of... Like, now granted, they may go down, and if you try to grapple them, they'll still have their hand strength. Like, they'll be fine grappling. They're not dead, but they're out of the battle. They're out of their survival because they can't stand. 100%. If you wanted to do a monk that was well-trained in pressure points, and your strikes could target pressure points, that's a cold shot. That would be like a 17 or an 18, maybe even a 19, because you're very specifically going for like a nerve. But if we wanted to build a subclass where it was all about how to hit muscle, so you're not doing massive amounts of damage, but your damage when you do it, like imagine a monk build where you never get more than like a d6 damage when you attack. But on crits, like on a 19 or 20, you always hit like a what are they called? Like
a
pressure point.
You know?
So what if you made a subclass build where it's like you had really low damage output, but when you crit, you do a pressure point and you just get like times 10 damage. Just instant like
I would like
plugs.
I would like it if I could hit certain spots where maybe it's not even damage. Just like, boom, you can't use this arm for 2 rounds.
Dude, I would love that. Like, that's a build I would be down for, right?
Yeah.
Like, and again, balancing act of, well, if they have armor, you're fucked. Great on barbarians. That's the anti-barbarian build. Because a barbarian wears no armor, or orcs that have no armor, like that's the anti-barbarian build. You just walk up and go, "Thump." All right, you can't use your shield right now.
I feel like you might be able to use it on somebody who's got like leather armor.
Maybe get in there, or maybe if you're
spots.
grappling someone, you can do certain ones. But I like the idea of a pressure point build.
That would be very cool.
Let's see. We got more stuff from Cosmic real quick because we still got to go back to our. Right? We only got one class.
Yeah, again, super distracting.
It happens. No, but that's what I like about Fridays. Like it's all open. So he also wanted to say that Elemental Weapon is a concentration spell. Okay, so the roleplay can carry over into making the concentration checks to keep the spell active. Using the fire one, for example, after taking a hit, you can describe the magic flame struggling to stay lit. Or something similar for each different version. So yeah, makes sense. You can add in a lot of like, what's going on. And I like doing that when you add your players into like the role play, right? Like instead of just saying, okay, make your concentration check to keep the flame going. Like when you're like, oh, the flame's starting to go out, you see it like, fizzle at the tip and you see just a small amount of flame at the hilt just about to go out. Make a roll to see if you can reignite it. That little bit, and then again, because players can't always it's either players usually are unable to add that like texture to the game, but sometimes DMs are a little bit too afraid to let players have too much agency to over embellish. But those are those moments where it's like like what do you do to reignite it, or roll to reignite, and they're like, oh, I made it. It's like, okay, so how like you see the flame down at the hilt, what do you do? How does it reignite? Because before you said you just put your hand across, like, do you blow one? Like, encourage the player to finish the sentence, right? This is another good DM technique for people, is if you want to add more enrichment, do that thing where you add the little bit of starter, give them the roll, and then say, okay, well you passed. How do you reignite it? What do you do? Give them because you already told them the build up, so they could just be like, I flick it onto the ground and the flame, just something, right? Like they
thinking one of those little flourishes that you do,
or like he blows on it, or he just goes, I just go, and then it just
so
something.
There was one time where I kind of and again, I think doing something like this very much depends on the group that you're in. And if you have the type of people you can do it with, but my DM, there was a lot going on in combat, there was a lot of enemies, and so a lot was happening, and he forgot to ask me to roll my concentration check after I got hit. And so I rolled my concentration check while he was doing some other stuff, and I failed it. But I failed it bad. I got a natural 1, right? And so again, trying to take some pressure off the DM, I just took a little agency and was like, I rolled myself a nice little D4 because it was a level 3 spell. It was a big spell. And it was what was it called? Call Lightning. Call Lightning. I really love this spell. It's a huge area spell, and it basically allows you to drop bolts of lightning for a minute.
Okay.
Like a huge area. I got a natural 1 on my fail, so I had it drop a bolt of lightning right next to me and do a little bit of damage to me as the spell dissipated and went down. That's
good. I like that. And see, that wouldn't be too disruptive. I think that's great. I really it's one of the areas that I think is best is when you do a crit fail or a crit success, giving the prompt to let the player be like, okay, what happens? Like, oh, you crit failed. What? How did you crit fail? And it depends on how you like to run things. If you have a crit table or if you have things that can happen. Like for me, crit fails, usually something bad will happen depending on what you were doing. It could be anything from just a miss to you could break things. Like I'll usually do an extra roll to see I'll do like a dex check to see if you can handle your weapon.
Right.
Or like a strength check to see if you hold onto your sword, or if you're using a bow, maybe do a dex check to see if you break it, or like drop your bow, or like skin your hand or something. Like just that'd be a crit, or like a crit success, like letting the player do the finishing description.
Right. I think one concept that I heard that I really like, and because I know a lot of people, like, they have a lot of attachment to the perception of their character. And say your dice are having a really off night and you just keep rolling terribly, it almost like breaks, like, I'm no longer this cool character, now I'm just doing crappy. But I definitely think there's ways to go about, like, articulating things, describing things, so it doesn't look like it's not so much that your character's bad or your character's screwing up all the time, or it could a lot of the times just be the environment. Like, hey, I missed a strike. It wasn't because I did a bad strike. It's because, a bird flew by and he dodged out of the way at the right time, or he stepped on a rock and just little things like that.
These are the greatest ways to enrich the gameplay too, and to make better descriptions. Because again, I think a lot of people come into the mindset of a hit versus a miss, right? They're just assuming I missed, But again, a miss just means you didn't do enough to offset their ability to survive. Again, the concept of HP is your ability to survive, right? So a missed AC doesn't mean that you didn't hit them physically. It could just mean that you glanced off their armor. They have a shield. They parried you. A miss AC could just be a parry. But just saying that, you know what I mean? Like
locked in moments where you're like fighting back and forth or whatever,
right? Because again, like when people see real combat, when you see like real like reenactment tournaments of night battles, no one just sits there for any amount of time. There's constant back and forth. There's constant jukes. There's fakes. That you're feigning constantly, where you're going to go this way, that way. You're constantly changing how your feet are moving. You might be changing position or stance. You're constantly kind of just like seeing how you can make them react. And none of these are actions, right? They're not, what you would call action economy, but there is a constant engagement with your enemy, with your opponent. You're constantly sizing each other up, seeing what each other will react to. If I just do this and then move right, what do you do? Did you jerk, or did you see me coming? And those are those times where it's like adding those details in, where it's like, I swung, it's like, oh, I didn't hit him. It's like, okay, so as you came in, he's been watching you, he swings you over to the right and, just kind of laughs at you, and again, adding those times where it's like, when you add in like those little moments where it's like, and he laughs, like he smirks as as he just like easily flicks your sword away, adding those moments to, again, entice the players to do the same thing, right? Where it's like you kind of want them to like taunt the NPCs, and you want them to get a little personal, because that's when I think you get also more out of them than just, oh, I swing, or I just attack him, right? Like when you try to make it more flourishing in the description of yourself, I think you get more out of your players. But again, just letting them think that a miss is a miss, I think is the wrong perception. I think adding in why it didn't take away HP versus it being a miss is a big difference. It hit, but it glanced. It hit, but it sounded like you hit them solid. Or you're doing a sword. Oh, you came in and you struck them, but you struck them broadside. So it just kind of ting.
Yeah.
All of these are perfectly good reasons and good examples of what happens in real fights. The best fighter can lose the grip of his sword, you know what I mean? For any, external reason. Like you said, you stepped on a rock, and as you came in, you got distracted and you swung a little wide, just anything you can do to also lessen the feeling like, oh, I missed. Yeah. That's not as fun as, oh, you almost got him, but at the last second, he was able to, like you said, lock you, with his sword. Just it makes it feel like you didn't miss. It makes it feel like I almost got it.
Yeah.
And those, I think, can make, and it can also bring the battle to life. People get kind of bored when they're just rolling dice and missing, but when you're constantly adding something happened, even if you missed, something still happened, you're still kind of like, oh, I want to roll again now. Like, it's just that whole thing. You want to see what happens next, and if all of that happens next is you miss, move on. Why do I want to see what happens next? Like, I want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Cosmic did point out that I did miss one of the descriptors. It's the lightning one. So the lightning one, when you activate this one, it says, "O Wrath of the Storm, strike the sword with your thundering fury and release your might. Manifest sundering silence." Or sundering slice.
Sundering slice.
He wants to know which one of these is our favorite in terms of with the readouts.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, the Forge.
I think I like the fire one the most, the way that they're written. It seems like it kind of flows the best, and it just seems to have the most like power when you say it.
You said the fire one?
Yeah. Just like, it's like imbuing this blade with the memory of your million burning embers. Just like in combat, it sounds like it flows. It sounds like it's an incantation. Like it sounds more like a ritual, right? It sounds like you are trying to call upon a greater power to imbue in the sword. It just, for me, it really nails the idea.
I will say, I think my favorite is the cold one. I like the idea of the cold steel and like the chilling cutter, and I can just imagine this sword just being surrounded by this icy chill as like frost comes off his hand as he just.
I do gotta say, out of all of the names though, Chilling Cutter is the best name.
Right? Chilling Cutter, man.
Yeah, Chilling Cutter is just a dope name.
But yeah, I'm here for it. I like it.
Yeah, I think the chant wise, though, the fire one just sounds like the other ones sound more ritualistic. Like the cold one just sounds more like what you would do, like you found a blade, but it's not awoken yet, and so you have to travel to a certain place with certain items. Like when I read the cold one, it sounds like you're in like a glacier, an ancient glacier, and you're doing this ritual to. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Whereas the fire one, I can imagine you in the middle of a battlefield, just awaken. Just it's more of that Bankai sense of just like, oh, it's time to fuck shit up. But okay, so we're almost at the 2-hour mark already, and we've only really talked about one class. We've gone on so many tangents today.
What did I say before we started?
Yeah, we wouldn't make them all.
We're gonna get through all of them.
So we talked about fighter, the class roleplay features. We talked about fighter, being able to do.
We talked about druid.
Hey, we talked about druid. I didn't really get into more options with druid, but fighter being able to like know where weapons were made, what fighting styles someone uses. Those kind of insights for character development, for dialogue options, those kind of roleplay features, knowing blacksmiths or their techniques could be an option. Again, for a fighter, anything that would revolve around the things that they do. But we also talked about, ones that are more universal, like being able to have a culinary palate. So you could really, cool. That could be anybody. That could be any class. Let's see. I'm trying. Oh yeah, I have them all. I was like, wait a second. Don't we have a list of something? I do have a list over here of just the other classes that we wanted to talk about, just to have.
Oh yes.
Off the top of our head. So we're talking about fighter. So like a barbarian class roleplay feature, right? So like let's think about that. Like from a barbarian point of view, a class roleplay feature, I think a good one would be, whether it's a role or not even a role, but you could do a class roleplay feature. You can down any drink up to 1 liter instantly. Like you could just do the whole just open your so you could do the German drink, right, where you open your throat and you just go.
See, that would be very interesting because you can do a couple things with that. It's something that just tastes rank and nasty,
but you just need to do it.
Bypass the taste,
and again, just roleplay. Like what is that? Does that benefit you in any way? Like it doesn't make taking potions in battle faster because it's not the drinking that takes the longest, right? Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't do anything. But the idea is on that roleplay aspect. Like you're a heavy drinker. You could challenge anybody, like I can drink faster than anybody, like just little fun stuff, right? I'm sure that could come in handy in a very specific situation, a drinking game, or something like that. But in general, that just sounds like it could be really interesting.
And like, say they do that with some like alcohol that's way more powerful than they thought it was, and they take all of that shit at once.
Oh yeah, it's
That could be
separate.
real bad news bears.
You give them a beer. You tell them it's a liter of beer and it's a liter of whiskey. It's like, oh, that was some spicy beer. It's like, oh, just wait.
That's rude as hell. Yeah, you have to make 2 constitution shakes, both at disadvantage. Yeah, you're gonna die.
But yeah, so it's like, something like that would be really interesting for, like, you can make one more specific to like the character build, but for like a barbarian, you just try to think of like what around that class build could really like.
I was thinking like arm wrestling contests. I was thinking of maybe they depending on how it is, because normally barbarians have a fairly low charisma, right? But maybe you could give them a bonus to one of their charisma stats, like persuasion or something, or just maybe what we were talking about earlier, their reaction, just because they're like a beautiful physical specimen of what being like strong is supposed to look like.
I got it. Class roleplay feature for barbarian: split personality.
Split personality.
You never remember your rage, but you are a completely different person. So when they talk to you when you're raging, different personality, different person, but when you go back, neither of them know about each other and what the others have done.
It's crazy.
So like a Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing for a roleplay feature where every time you rage, you're technically someone new.
I like. Have you ever seen Seven Deadly Sins?
I think I've seen like 1 or 2 episodes.
So there's this one dude his name is Escanor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's supposed to be like the strongest dude, and he's like so arrogant and all this, that, and the third. But during like the nighttime, he is this scrawny little dude with glasses. But then when the sun rises, like that's where his power comes from. So as the sun comes up, he like turns into this like huge, ripped, hulking dude. And then at high noon, his power is at its zenith.
Right.
It's its highest. And he can do incredible feats at that. And then as the sun goes down, his power slowly wanes. And
interesting.
He's just a normal Joe at night. Like that's, but like, imagine if like when you're in those 2 different states, like I imagine like a barbarian who's just this tiny little dude, but then when he rages, he like freaking goes hard, and then he comes back on his glasses, and he's like, all right, nice.
Right.
I didn't have to get it.
Ooh, what about barbarian class feature? Situationally could be beneficial, but they just instinctually can know the weight of any item they pick up within like 1 or 2 pounds.
I like that.
So you just pick something up and you're just like, oh, it's like 5-pound sword. That's cute. You want to try the 50-pound hammer? But just like, yeah, just the idea that anything over 1 pound, they can within a pound or 2 basically like guess the weight. So you can't get like super creative, like, oh, they could tell gems apart or coins, but they could pick something up and go like, that's probably 100 pounds, give or take.
I really like that. I feel like that could be weirdly useful in a lot of situations. If like someone's supposed to be delivering something to you in like a crate or something like that, and roughly, like you've moved enough of these crates, roughly about how much they're supposed to weigh. This one weighs off. You're like, no.
Yeah. No. So again, super situational where it would be like beneficial, but otherwise just a cute little like just one of those little like class features where you could just your character can always know. Excuse me, can always know when something's what something weighs. And again, it kind of makes sense for the rager because just having a lot of strength and because I'm trying to think of like barbarian is kind of one of those weird classes where it's like it's mostly about going out of control. So it's like, what can you really do that's more of a role play idea?
That kind of falls in line with them being out of control. I do like that.
But isn't directly proportional to their personality that is being played by the player, right? Because otherwise you could just talk about personality traits.
Right.
But having something that's unique to them that just as they play, they can just have a talent or something. Because again, some of these things can be based off of roles. Other of them can just be just generalized things. I was thinking about one too, moving over to Artificer. imagine if an artificer, as a kind of a roleplay, a character roleplay, they have basically a cantrip version of animate object, to where any object that has moving parts, kind of like how they can imbue a weapon, they can use their imbue power on a part, on anything that has moving parts, and basically they can temporarily make it into like an animatronic for like a minute. So like a doll would like be able to like move around a little, and not like intricately, but like the idea of like, you know how like the old school robots would just do this.
Yeah.
Like imagine just anything that could move would do, like a rocking chair would rock on its own. A rocking horse could rock a child on its own. Like a spinning toy could just like sit there and, like spin up on its own. But the idea of like, it's not like it's going to like drastically change what you can do. Maybe you could use it as a distraction. But the idea is for anything that's like handheld, an artificer can imbue anything with moving parts, and it will move on its own for a short period of time.
I imagine all the toys in Toy Story going after Sid, and just like you animating all a bunch of tiny little objects, and just like zombie going like it doesn't do any damage.
Exactly, but situationally you could make it work. But I like that idea of, again, it's just one of those role play features. You could use it for kids. You could use it for, like, well, and what do you do? And then you just pick something up and make it move. And you're just like, that's what I do. Like, just again, it's just for that whole thing of maybe you carry something around, and whenever you're bored, you just make it move with your power, because it's like one of those, it's an innate power that just always is with you, kind of like a cantrip.
I kind of like that. That's very cool. I think artificers, a lot of.
Oh, wait a minute. You might have to put in the fact that it has to not only fit within your hand, but it has to be handheld. Because I just realized there's a big balancing issue with that one. You know what else has moving parts? Locks. And if I could just go into a padlock and hold my padlock up and just go animate, click, oh, hey, look, I'm in.
Listen, yeah, I feel like
so the moving parts basically would have to be like external moving, but there's some caveats there. But I was thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty harmless. You could just move the inner workings of a lock. Oh yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Let's see. We got we do love our tangents, Cosmic. We do love it, but that's why we call it D&D discussions, because it's if we stayed too much on script, I think we wouldn't get some of the best ideas out of us. Like 100%, a lot of the times, I think our tangents are where we get our best inspirations from. I know that's how I've built most of High Point. High Point doesn't get built by me sitting down and deciding to. High Point tells me when it's decided something's new.
This needs to happen, bro.
But yeah, no, we absolutely have our tangents on here, but they are fun. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Honestly, when I remember when I, like 9 months ago when I first started coming up with the idea of what I wanted to do for streaming again, one of the things I knew for a fact that I wanted from this is a space where I can be open and free and not scripted. Like, I knew that's one of the aspects of how I wanted to approach this, because I do want to get better at knowing the topics and staying focused. But the idea of tangents I knew was going to be the strong suit, because that's how I'm going to pad the time and I'm going to get through this all. But that's just how I work. I just work on, we have a topic, but when someone inspires me to think of something, if I don't think of it right then and there, who knows when that inspiration will come back.
Amen.
And
I cannot tell you how many things I've lost to the void because of that.
And there's been so many times where early on when I first was doing the stream, like the first couple, I was trying so hard to have topics and stay on topic that it was a struggle, and I knew beforehand that it was going to be a struggle, but it wasn't until I just embraced the idea of, I just have to come on here and just talk. Like, D&D is something I can always talk about, but it was really hard for me to say, you're going to talk about this today, and then 3 days from then, you're going to talk about this. That was almost impossible for me, because if I just wasn't in the mood for that topic, or if I just didn't have anything on my mind that day, but I had something from another topic, I'd feel bad. But now with this idea of we have a generalized topic, but just kind of flowing with it, it's just so much easier to actually like talk about those things and let those ideas come out, because I'm much more of a do it here and now kind of person. I'm definitely much more of
Yeah.
a let's do it while it's fresh,
Yeah,
and then we'll hash out the logistics later. But let's get it all out on the table now.
Facts.
Um,
Facts. I'm here for it.
But yeah, definitely a good observation. Cosmic also says he is thinking of developing a joke item. He was thinking about a joke item on the way home from work. A clown's confetti tunic. Whenever you get hit by slashing or a piercing attack, an amount of confetti comes out from within the tunic, distracting the attacker and making the next attack against the creature have advantage. Oh, okay, so you have advantage. Attack against that creature. The tunic has 3 specialty effects. 1 negates crit hits. Okay, so you can't be critted on. As a sheer amount of confetti acts as a damage absorber, preventing the would-be extra damage. Oh, okay. 2, it gives the wearer proficiency in the performance skill. Okay, so kind of like a jester's outfit. And 3, it has a -1 to the wearer's core charisma score due to the tunic's looking so silly. Others have had a hard time taking the wearer seriously.
That's very fair.
That's
very fair.
That's actually kind of legit. That's actually kind of hilarious though. I just think of Halo when you had the confetti mod on and you would just pop the grunt heads.
Headshots for the grunts, yes. I love that.
Oh man, especially if this was a bard wearing this and you had vicious mockery as a reaction. So if you just use vicious mockery as a reaction every time you got hit, so it's like a Pata! Oh, look at that! You almost killed me. Pata! Oh, look at that! It felt like the wind. Pacha! Oh, you hit like your sister. Just every.
I thought that was gonna be a crit. No.
It's like success. You still haven't done anything. Like just constantly sitting there every time he does it and just getting into his head.
That's funny.
That's hilarious.
I absolutely love that.
So yeah, I think Barbarian. I don't know any others that I would do like off the top of my head for Barbarian. Bard I think is almost too like a bard would have to be something like you can tune any instrument.
That would be kind of cool.
You know what I mean? It would be very universal. Like you may not be able to play any instrument, and because remember,
look at the subclasses of bard, like
because if you think about it, it's not that you can play any instrument. Just because you can't play it doesn't mean you can't tune it, right? Like because you have a sense of music. You know, like if you blew through a harmonica, well maybe a harmonica is not right, but if you could make a sound on an instrument and you could adjust it one way or the other, and you could tell, oh, it's going higher pitch or lower pitch, you can tune it, right? You know generally what the scale of music should be. But that doesn't mean that you have the proficiency to put all of the all of your fingers together and make the tune.
Right.
Because playing the instrument is different than individually striking. Like, you know, a lute, you could strike each one. A lyre, you can strike each one. A harmonica, you can blow into each one. But all 3 of those play completely differently. So you could understand what it's supposed to sound like when you do a note, but not how to put the notes together. So that could be for a bard, being able to, you know, do that. You can give them, and like maybe this one's like you give them a bonus on history checks whenever it involves a writer or a famous artist. So they get bonus to history checks whenever to pull out like, oh, that's by so and so, and then they can have, you know, maybe so not just a history bonus, but a history to the arts. Like maybe they have a history to the arts bonus as a class feature.
So they got some interesting classes in here, like, but again, I think you and I were talking about this a little bit before stream. Like my mindset when it comes to bards is, I think, slightly different than 5e concept when they come to bards.
Right, that they're more based on magic and not actually on their performance.
Yes, and so like again, especially when we're talking about like role play stuff. Like because again, every time I think of what I want to do, like even with the subclass that I made, I wanted to make it synergistic with everything else that happens, and I'm not even sure what would be synergistic with a lot of the stuff that bards have. But if I'm just thinking about it like innately, like in a void, and like what I think cool subclass features for this would be, you know, I'm likely gonna go down the route of because for me, bards, one of their primary features is being charismatic.
Yeah.
Being able to interact with people, being able to and so something like being able to just change somebody's mood. I mean, not necessarily like.
I got one for you. So this would be more of a high point, like character specific one, not a class feature, but it would be a class roleplay feature for a specific character. Mm-hmm. But what if the bard in the group gave the party a default +1 to disguise at all time, or a -2 to perception, as in whenever the party is with the bard, especially if like they're known or they're being looked for or they're suspicious, or let's say there's a dragonborn in the party and people don't like dragonborns, as long as the bard is within like 20 feet of the party members, the party members are less detectable. Like, as in, the bard, you walk into a bar, the bard is the first person everyone sees and glances towards.
The attention is way more towards them, and it pulls the attention away from anybody else.
So this could manifest as, if anybody in the party is disguised, you get a +2, as long as the bard's around, because they're distracted. If you're wanted, or if you're not liked, you have a more likelihood of getting away, not because you're getting away because they think you're fine, but because they're not noticing you. Basically, It could be a +2 to stealth, distraction, whatever you want to call it, but I think that would be a unique one, right? Like, the bard gets no benefit, but he's so charismatic, he's so good looking, he's so loud and boisterous that naturally...
The opposite for the bard, like if the bard ever became wanted, then it would be like damn near impossible for him to...
Yeah, maybe he can't hide in the party. Maybe, again, the whole thing is he's the first noticed in the party, right? So maybe that's the benefit, is whenever the party is seen as a group, he is the first noticed. So that could be a really interesting dynamic.
I like that.
And how does a DM do that? Maybe every single time the party starts up a conversation, you know, kind of like how you see this in culture or in TV and movies for like cultural disputes, or like like old school movies to show like a power play, but like people will walk up, but there's only one person they introduce. They walk up to, like, I'm ignoring all of you. I recognize you as the person I respect.
Yeah.
What if that's the thing? Every single time the party goes somewhere, like the DM, the first person anyone approaches is
just ignores everybody else.
Oh, hi, how are you doing, sir? Or what do you want? Like, it's just the natural instinct for everyone to be ignored, and they go immediately talk to the bar. And imagine if you had like a knight or like a fighter who's like royalty in the party, but they still like everyone just always goes for the bard. Like, oh, you must be the leader, and just do that and again, the DM can do that every now and again. Just the NPC. Oh, you must be in charge here. Oh, you must be the leader. Oh, you must be so and so.
Be hilarious. The prince of the group goes to his hometown where he's the freaking prince. They come up to the bar.
Yes, like, oh, it's so good to see. Oh my God, like the main butler. Oh, it's so good to have you. You're such an honored guest. Oh, Prince Val, you're here. Yes, good to see you. I'm glad you escorted our guest today. And then it just like, but
you made sure he was safely here.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I didn't know you were escorted already from the front door. It's so good. Thank you so much. You can go away now. Like, we'll take it from here.
That's funny.
But like, that would be such a weird, again, roleplay feat, right? Just that would be way more involved with the DM. I think I would do that. But that kind of dynamicism, right? Of it just pulls the attention. That would be something a bard, I think, would be perfect at.
I do like that.
I think that. Let's see. So I think that's a good one for a bard. I think that's a good, like, solid, like, category.
I do.
So what about? So I think for the generalized one, I think like tuning any instrument or being able to know an instrument after hearing it. Again, can't play it, but you can instantly recall. I know what instrument's being played.
Yeah, I would even say, like, maybe not with, like, I mean, obviously not with, like, spell songs or anything, but for the most part, being able to have, like, a really good ear for music, or, like, knowing a lot of, like, songs that might be obscure, or not knowing a lot of, like, well, see, that plays into, like, they have war bards and stuff like that are...
well, and this is where, it would depend on your flavor, right? You can know songs, you can know tunes, you can know how to, you can know instruments, you could know authors, whatever type of bard you build. And that's where, again, with High Point, I was like, I like the idea of these generalized ones, but realistically, these would be better fine-tuned with the players. So let's think here about Cleric, because Cleric's also a really interesting one, right? Like, Clerics already have a variety of roleplay options. You know what I mean? Like they have a variety of things that they already get that
I
could.
feel like they're like role play centric almost. Like you gotta have some sort of like backstory.
I really do like how, like, we're talking about a generalized one. I like the one that you brought up where a general, like, okay, so kind of like I said for the artificer, you could take like animate object but turn it into a cantrip, and that's their feat. What if you took the bless spell and turned it into a cantrip?
Interesting, kind of like
what you were talking about earlier.
Kind of like a what do you call it? Guidance, except with attack rolls and stuff like that.
Yeah, but this one could just be like, you know, your cantrip, your class feature is that, you know, for peasants, for, you know, NPCs and non necessary people, you can turn their day around. You can bless them and it has a positive impact. They could feel better, their luck could change, but you know, in reality, it doesn't provide like a player a bonus to roll, but maybe the DM could be like, if you bless a party member, you could be like, you feel better. Like it's just that whole thing of like, you're in a better mood now. You don't feel as worried. Like again, maybe it's more of a role play thing where like maybe a party member, another player, is acting their character and their like character's really, really nervous. Like, guys, we're gonna die. Like we can't do this. We're gonna go up against the evil lord, and you can go, be blessed, you're fine, and be like, you don't feel nervous anymore. That's it. Okay, didn't do anything, but now that character can play not nervous.
I do really like the idea of you were talking earlier, but like if you know what the lucky feat is, you could just like specifically for like peasants or something like that. For the rest of the day, they got luck points.
Yeah, right.
Used to like turn a situation where they were having like a terrible day before, or something's about to go terribly wrong. It just doesn't anymore.
Right.
Or things just happen to work out in like the perfect way, or something like that, and you just give them and so you can turn the energy of a town around very slowly and very individually, and be like, oh, things are going better for you. And now that shopkeeper is nicer to the people that come into the door, and then, you know, it's just like a little
cascade effect. But nothing like, you know, nothing game changing, but a cascade effect. Like little things like that would be, I think, like again, a lot of fun. I think you can have a lot of fun with, like, you know, again, clerics are all about, you know, just spreading the vibe, right? So it's like being able to just put people in a better mood, just calm them down.
I mean, often the cleric of the group is the mom of the group. Like, I'm just saying, you know, they're out there trying to take care of. I mean, lightweight, look at Clarissa.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. But yeah. What else?
See.
I think, like, I don't want to get too, like, religious with things, but, like, they have the idea of like, sacrifices, right? So, say you either do some, like, blood sacrifice of, like, a creature or something like that, or say you offer gold or something like that, or in exchange for, like, a small favor. You know?
But you can already do that. Like that anybody can do that depending on the deity that they're contacting. Like that's just something that can happen.
Oh, you're talking about in High Point?
Yeah.
Okay.
But going into that idea,
Cosmic says the Dragonborn is the party's bard.
But Dragonborn is a race, Bard is a class. What if the Bard is also the Dragonborn? Well, then they would not only get everyone's attention, but everyone would be very curious about why. Like, again, for the DM, right? Like, let's say you're in a place where normally Dragonborn aren't accepted, or they're usually, like, scared of. Maybe you turn this into this one people are just fascinated by. It's just one of those, no one's threatened by this one. This is a Dragonborn that people are just...
It's the Rainbow Dragonborn.
Yeah, maybe he just looks different. Maybe he acts different. Maybe he dresses different. Maybe again, the DM can talk about how Dragonborn usually come in armor and weapons, and this one's dressed up in, you know, like a monk's robes, or he's a performer, right? like the idea of, again, especially if he's like, a bard, maybe he's known, maybe he's famous. So this particular Dragonborn is known and famous, and therefore is not only immediately recognizable over the party, but people are more okay with it. Or maybe they're not, but they're still like, but why is this one different? Like, maybe we should be okay with them.
What's special about you?
But yeah, always a way to incorporate any level of interaction. Depending on how you want to, incorporate these. Let's see. Did we talk about the monk yet? Did we give monk any, like...
No. So, again, when I think monk, when I think class feature, I'm instantly thinking like, hey, you grew up in a monastery, you've been training in martial arts, you've, some hand-to-hand combat.
You're a tea snob.
You probably, yeah.
Just like, oh yeah, I was thinking too, you make clerics like a wine snob. Like that's your class, that your roleplay feat is like you just know everything about every wine.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, like a monk.
That is one sacrament before.
Oh, what if like your class roleplay feat is that you can turn almost anything into tea? Like you just have such a vast knowledge as a monk that no matter where you are, you can find ingredients for
some sort of,
and it's not no benefits, but it's just if you're in the middle of nowhere and all you got is water, you'd be like, I got you guys, and then just 5-10 minutes later you come back with an assortment of leaves and you just make a refreshing tea for everyone. And it doesn't do anything different other than just add to the fact that you could liven up the meal.
I like that. Meditation. I feel like you could do something very interesting.
Ooh, what about... So here's one for DMs that could situationally use it once in a blue moon. The monk can do guided meditation. Big kind of a roleplay thing,
like that, yeah.
But once in a while, maybe that guided meditation turns into a trip to the astral plane by accident. Maybe the monk fucks up and accidentally takes them too far, or something else comes into their little dream walk.
Hey guys, we need your help real quick. Come on, visit us.
Right,
but right place, right time. You never know. Interesting. Very interesting.
Like maybe, no, you don't want to give it too much ability. I was about to give it like an actual perk, but you don't want, these aren't perk based.
This is giving me random flashbacks. A long time ago, I remember you talking about something called, what did you call it? Impractical Powers?
Ah, yes, the Impractical Powers. That was such a fun game. I should have done something with that. I couldn't figure out how to actually implement the grand idea, and I've never really known if I should add it into High Point. Like, I've always considered it, but at the same time, it's just, it's one of those things where there's already so much customization. To add in something like that is just so much more complicated. One of these days, I'll have to tell you all about Impractical Powers, because it was such a cool concept. It was back in the day when like Gaia Online was really popular and other like online roleplay communities. Impractical Powers was a concept idea that I had for a roleplay type community where I essentially would generate a way for people to earn, these, essentially you'd create an account, get in a profile, and you'd be granted an impractical power, basically just out of a list that I would just constantly be generating, because I had hundreds of these things just always being developed. And the whole point was originally just the idea of the impractical powers were just that. They were superpowers that were impractical, that would never really lead to, like, unless super everything aligned perfectly, they just wouldn't really lead anywhere. You couldn't really make money, you couldn't survive, you couldn't do anything, but they were still superpowers, right? And we've seen this before, like, you've seen, like, in like The Boys and other like parodies of superhero movies, you see like like in Deadpool, they've talked about like, goofy powers, like the parody powers, and that's kind of what this is. But the idea for the website was eventually going to be where I wanted to make like that role play, like that community where I would make like scenarios, and people would have to figure out ways to use their impractical power to overcome the scenario, and then people could like group up and say, hey, we're grouping up because his power, this power, and that power, and then based off of that, the idea would be like you can earn stuff and earn some kind of like website currency or something, and then gain new powers.
Right.
It was just this. It was supposed to be this really big like community build of like what can you do with your power, and your power may not be that great, but how can you combine it with somebody else's power, and how can you guys all like benefit from this, right?
Imagine if one person's power was kind of cool, somebody else's power with that power was really cool. Somebody else's power helped counteract the downsides of those other two people.
Exactly. And that was so it was some fun ideas. I'll have to dig up my notes on the impractical powers.
Now this list you were generating, was it like
It was I had like a physical notebook of I would write them down all the time. I don't know if I have that notebook anymore. That's probably been lost over the years, but I do have some of my original write-ups. I remember because obviously as the creators, I got a little bit more of powers, but I also I also made mine have downsides. So like some of the powers are just what they are. Other powers have like downsides because they're so good that they'll actually have a con. And then other powers I designed to actually have like tiers, like level ups, or just different people would have different versions. But I always remember my power because I was the creator of it. So my impractical power was that just at any point, whenever I wanted, I could just make a medium McDonald's fry appear and just eat it. I could just McDonald's fry, medium, nothing big, just fresh McDonald's fries. But that was kind of like it did kind of break one of the tentative rules of impractical powers, which is you can't survive on it. Like, it can't really be used to make money. Can't really be used to like really survive. So the way I kind of made mine alternative, and this is kind of what spawned ideas of how I also balanced other powers, is I can do that whenever I want. Just make a medium McDonald's fresh fry, warm, salted, everything. The catch. And it's not like immediately noticeable. It would take hundreds, thousands of uses. But the idea is for me not to spam it, to just sell that, for me not to overuse it. Every time I use it, they get a little saltier and a little more stale. And it's like literally like one molecule of like 1 grain of salt added, like 1 molecule of moisture, because it's always a fresh cup. But eventually the idea is if you burned it too much, you'd eventually just have pure salty, cold, stale fries every time they came out. Like, and eventually they would just be unedible, right?
Eventually it would be a weapon.
So it's just basically like, here, I have all the salt in the world. But that would be like that was the idea of like it's just one of those things where I could just be like, whenever you're just chilling, I'm just like, I'm bored. I just want a McDonald's fry. Just hungry, just a little snack. And then my brother, who had helped me create this idea, and he helped flesh out some of the original ideas. He got to pick his, and we fleshed his out a little bit to again make his not like perfect. So. Whereas mine's a little bit better because it's sustainable. I can actually live a little bit longer, get some salt and whatnot. His also has a slight benefit, but his loses effect over time as well because his is all visual. So he wanted to be able to just like on command temporarily just burst into dimes. So how like you can stack dimes or coins in like shapes. So just imagine at any point he could just literally like suddenly become his body shape, his exact body, however he is, but just stacked dimes. But then they would fall over, right? Because they're just stacked and uneven. So like the idea is he could just be like, hang on a second. And just literally 100,000 dimes just would cascade across the floor for like 3 seconds and then just he's back. That's all it does is he just falls into a cascade of dimes that were his shape and then comes right back like 3 seconds later. That's it. Like his only benefit is like chain link fence or jail cells. You could walk towards it, burst into dimes, let the momentum make them all fall, and then you'll reform on the other side. That's about as beneficial as his gets.
No.
Or gunshot, if you could time it. But his downside is every time he does it, he loses a dime. So imagine a full body, full perfect stacked dimes in the shape of your body. So like that, however thick you are, that's a lot of dimes. But every time he uses the power, 1 dime goes away. So like imagine he starts with 100,000. And then every time he uses it, he loses a dime. So eventually, whenever he did it, he would just turn into 1 like dime that flips in the air, and then it hits the ground, and then he comes back. So he can't move, right? Like it's not like wherever the most dimes fall, he forms. It's just one dime appears wherever he's standing, flips, lands, and then poof, he's back.
Now, hypothetically, if I use this power right at the point of impact when someone's about to punch me, am I gonna take whatever damage from that punch?
No, you don't. When you're in the dimes mode,
So
you're just
it's
just
lightweight an iframe.
yeah.
It's a lightweight iframe. So you just get a temporary iframe.
If you could technically time it right, where you burst into dimes right before someone hits you, they would just punch right. I mean, that would probably hurt them. They just punch through some dimes.
Right.
But yeah, just
or just punch one dime. What if I was like, hey, here's what I need you to do, teammate. I'm down to my last dime, but I'm only one dime.
That's only one dime.
So you have to know exactly where my dime is.
Do it a couple times to like.
I want you to punch my dime across this river. I want you to take your staff and I want you to baseball bat my dime.
Why not just be like? Why not just get like time it right to where it's like you could get someone with like a slingshot and just be like, okay, toss them a rock and go. How quickly can you grab and launch the rock and get to the timing right to where you're like doing this and you're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, dime me.
And you launch and he turns back into person halfway over.
And then you do it right before you hit the ground. Dink.
Oh yeah.
So.
Right there.
But yeah, so those were like the high end impractical powers. I'm trying to think of like one of my favorites that we came up with. You can sit on a cloud.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, how you gonna get there? But you can sit on a... So your power... So imagine knowing that. Imagine you could be told what your power is, and without a doubt, you know what your power is. Your power is told to you by an omnipotent being, and they told you your superpower is you can sit on clouds.
The question is, do you have to be on top of the cloud?
Yes.
So if you're in the midst of the cloud, you'll fall through.
So you can sit on... So imagine the only way you're doing that is getting a helicopter and just outside the helicopter, you're like, okay, guys, hang on.
Now, the question
and then you can just sit there and you
have to be your butt.
Yes, you have to sit. So, but the idea is like if you could somehow go, you could travel with the cloud as long as you have your parachute. Just travel with the cloud, and you're just like, okay, I'm done, and then just fall backwards or fall forward, and then skydive. But that was the impractical power and then we got into the philosophical concept of, well, does fog count? If you can get above the fog layer, does fog? And then technically yes. But
that's what I was thinking, because like in San Francisco, a lot of the times that's why I asked, because you do it in the middle of it.
Yeah, but you would have to be on top. You'd have to roughly fight like so. But again, stupid impractical power. But it's one of those funny ones where like imagine knowing that. Just imagine knowing you're a superhero, but you have like I could sit on. That's all I could. I can sit on them. I can't lay down. I can't do anything. I have to get up there to begin with. I can't skydive otherwise. I mean, imagine skydiving and then just plow like right on your ass. Like you literally would have to come out of a helicopter and like just jump backwards onto a cloud and then like, okay, I'm sitting. See, it works, guys. I wasn't fucking. But then that's it. That's all you can do. Imagine. You can walk on water up to 1 foot deep. That's it.
I mean,
so again, in a very very, very weird way, you could try to make money off of it, but you'd have to have so much more. It's like it by itself does nothing for you. And one foot deep, like even like on the ocean, like one wave could fuck you up. You could be like, okay, I'm balancing, and then a wave could just be like nope, that was 1 foot 1 inch. But yeah, just like you can walk over puddles. Like you just never have to worry about like puddles. You can just walk right over them.
I do like
but
that.
Only up to 1 foot.
I do like that. What about being able to teleport to the nearest public restroom? But it has to be a public restroom.
I think the teleport one is you can teleport to a random space up to 5 feet away.
5 feet away.
That's like just within like 5 or 10. I think it was like 5 or 10 feet. But that's it. You can teleport.
Cooldown.
Yeah, probably. But it's also it's random.
Oh, random.
So you can just be like, you could keep going forward or backward or in a circle.
I'm just close my eyes and just use it as fast as I can,
and just see what happens.
Yeah.
You can fly 3 inches off the ground. And I mean fly like Superman. So you're full on flying, but you're only 3 inches off the ground. Can you just imagine just like walking down the street and someone's just hovering?
The question is, what happens if I like hit a speed bump or something? Do I launch? Do I glide for a little bit, or?
Well, it depends because it's your general body. So if the speed bump is over that 3 inches, you might just run head into it because it's high because you haven't reached above it yet. So like curbs would be a problem. You wouldn't be able to just fly up onto a curb. You'd have to actually like.
Up and get up on the curb.
And then imagine that you're like 1 foot. You're like, okay, hang on a second. Thunk. like a hover car. You're just like. Oh god, these were so much fun. I remember these. I'm trying to think of like what else. I don't have any of the others off the top of my head, but yeah, these were just like the stupid things you could do.
Oh, I have one. What if I could like make a coin appear in my hand, but like it can't leave my hand? Like, if someone were to take it away from me, it would disappear. If I were to drop it, it would disappear. And so
I think I had a similar one where you can flip a coin, but that's it.
But it just
you can do that.
It flips, but it doesn't.
But the moment it comes down, you never get to see where it lands. You can only flip a coin. You can't ever actually.
You flip it. Ha!
It's again. You can flip it in the air, and then once it touches you again or hits the ground, once it's off of you, it will continue to flip. And the moment it stops flipping, it's gone. There's no way to, like, I think that was the impractical powers. You can flip a coin, but you can never see it. Just.
Oh, I would love it if you could flip a coin and it always lands straight up and down.
That would be an interesting impractical power. Every coin you flip always lands
vertical.
That would be interesting.
It would be cool little parlor trick. Doesn't actually do anything, but
I'm trying to think of like there were so many random ones that I came up with over the years. Because again, it's like you just got to think of like what is funny and what like obviously stands out as something you shouldn't be able to do, but at the same time, it's almost just like if you had it, you'd just be like. Okay, like so that's something I can do.
Well, all right. That's funny
though. Ooh, I just thought of a new one. I'm trying to think of my old ones. You can change your voice to what you sounded like 10 years ago. Exactly, so literally today you can sound like what you sounded 10 years ago today, but that's it. That's the only like special voice. You can just automatically change your voice to 10 years ago.
What do you make your voice sound like when you're 10?
What do you mean?
What would your voice sound like when you're 10 years old? A child that's 10 years old who was born 10 years ago. What would his voice sound like?
Probably just baby vocals. It would literally have the same vocals as a because you know what babies have like a sound. They could talk. He would be able to talk, but he would have that vocal like screech of undeveloped vocal cords.
That would be crazy. This would kind of be if you could look 1 minute into your own past. Like 1 minute into your own past, you could just see what happened to you a minute ago. Like you were just there. Like you know what happened. Like,
that would actually be kind of funny, just where you can.
Where did I put my keys? Like where the remote, when I'm sitting down and I'm like looking at the TV and I set the remote down and I have no idea where the freaking remote went. Where did it? Like where is it? Like,
the only problem is every time you use it, you're like, oh, that was like 15 minutes ago. Damn it, it wasn't 1 minute ago.
That would be a problem. That would be the downside of time blindness. Would it be a good rogue ability like that?
The impractical power, or are we going back to class features, the class roleplay features?
I mean, yes and. Because I feel like rogues would have some really entertaining impractical powers. like reverse pickpocketing. Like every time they go to take something out of someone's pocket, something of their own gets replaced at random. Like you take
that's a little less than impractical. That's that could be pretty devastating, actually.
I mean, you're actually going to steal from some other folks.
Ooh,
but...
no, that's also way too powerful. I was gonna say, being able to tell if a lock is locked or not. Just anytime you look at a lock, you can automatically tell if it. But that's for a rogue. Knowing if a door is locked or not is way too easy. That's way too good. I mean, I guess granted, it's no different than walking up and testing it.
Yeah.
But still, just that might be a little bit too much for impractical.
Unless you give it a downside,
Ooh,
locked,
for a D&D rogue, right? Regardless of success, you'll always know if your lockpick is going to break on this next try. Whether or not it succeeds and you get in, you just always know whenever you pull a lockpick out, you're like, oh fuck, these are gonna break this time. Like you just know, shit, they're gonna break.
Now, is that the next time you use them they're gonna break? Or if I don't use them here, they might survive long.
And that's where you start to get into that's just where you get into the too craziness, right? Because then you have to get too pedantic about it.
I won't use these. I'll use these.
And that's why again the impractical powers usually are something more straightforward because they're usually self-explanatory. Like again, you can sit on a cloud. Self-explanatory, all wrapped into the phrase like you don't need a descriptor. The impractical power is what it says. That was always like one of the other fundamental rules I tried to do was try not to make them too complicated or too like the idea was when you introduce your impractical power, everybody should have an idea immediately what that means, right? Like I can walk on water as long as it's less than a foot deep. Like that everyone immediately gets right to it. If that's your impractical power, you can walk on water less than a foot deep. Oh, that's all I need to know.
Cool, buddy.
Oh man, and that's where it's like sometimes it's hard to like fit one to somebody, whereas it's just interesting to like think of an idea and you're just like, oh yeah, you could that would be weird for you to be able to do that.
Okay, so I did get an idea for a class rogue feature, and maybe this
like a roleplay feature.
Yeah, like a roleplay feature. Let me know what you think of this, but basically you have telekinesis for objects only if they're within like a certain distance of your hand. So it's like I wouldn't be able to grab something off the desk behind you, but I would be able to pick up like my phone right here. Right.
Okay.
So like if I'm going to pickpocket somebody, I still have to get close enough to pickpocket them, but I can just coax it out without actually like sticking my hand in their pocket.
That's way more than practical.
But that's why I'm thinking not like the impractical power, but that's like a role play feature. It's not necessarily like you're still gonna have to do your sleight of handshake. You're still gonna have to, but like you could do different things with it. You're rolling dice. You could that could actually.
It's. I think that might be a little that might be pushing because that's it's borderline mage hands.
Cards and stuff, really,
That's a little bit much, but
I mean, you do get invisible mage hand if they're a what do you call it, arcane trickster.
But exactly, this is supposed to be something that's just like something that's not related to what the game is already trying to put out. But
it's supposed to be more role
But
play.
yeah, for rogues though, so you're thinking about like when it comes to rogues. It's really hard because again, it's like it's easy to want to go for something that's already in existence. Like you have appraisal and things like that. So finding out like those are situational things that you want. You can know the maker of a lock as you're unlocking it. Like while you're in a lock, you're like, oh, okay. So this is this is a Fredrickson lock, right? So it must be 3 pins. All right, like it doesn't help you lockpick it. It does. Your character helps. It helps your character lockpick, right? Because they're talking them through, like, okay, so there's 3 pins here. He's gonna have a false thing over here. But in reality, the roll is still the same. But maybe you have an extensive knowledge of locks. Like you know the maker, you know where it was sold, you know what it's made out of. Situationally, it doesn't really help unless someone wants to blow maybe up a lock or something, but
I mean,
it doesn't affect your actual lock picking roll.
maybe in some role play situations, you could convince somebody that something that they have is not secure enough.
Right, exactly.
You know, be like, hey, listen, I know exactly how many pins that lock has, and I could probably lockpick it with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
That's not a lock you want to use here. Let me create something for you, or something like that.
No, absolutely. Like that, I think is well up the alley of a rogue. That again doesn't already play to what the rogue already has available to it, right? I didn't think it's because it's like you have the pickpocketing option, which you don't really. I don't really like to try to like hone in on anything that would be build specific. Because not everyone's going to be a pickpocket, not everyone's going to do lock picking. So it's like, what else does a rogue other than like doing stealth and stuff? So can't really do anything based off of stealth either.
Okay, weird one. I don't know where this would go. I think this might be an impractical power, but my brain's just going. Just the ability when you throw like a dagger at something, you have the ability to just miss your target. So imagine like
an intentional miss.
Kind of like it would always miss. Like that was basically your powers. Like, and you could use it on purpose. Like, hey, I'm going to aim for your head, but I know it's not going to hit your head. You know what I'm saying? But like, it's hard because you don't know what it's going to.
See, I feel like that would be more of like a called shot. I think that would be more like within like what we were talking about with called shots, like because you're intentionally trying to miss. So the idea that you could hit them, I like the idea of being able to like still maybe hit them. but interesting that you can do interesting.
Or even if it was just like I can choose to.
No, that's more of a gamble. I was thinking, what if you could always know the odds of something? You know what I mean? Just like on a bet or whatever, you're just like, these are the odds. These are the odds of that happening. Like not like astronomically, like anytime someone says, "What are the odds of this?" But like in situations that you could, like like gambling or something like that, where you're just like someone gives you some data and you're like, oh, okay, well you're getting like 2-to-1 odds. You should put your money to that. Like something like horse races, you just know like what the odds are of someone winning, whether or not it's actually gonna happen. But man, Rogue's an interesting one. Rogue is really an interesting one because it really depends on how you play the Rogue. How do you think of it in terms of, like, do you think of a Rogue as just this? Like, because again, there's a lot of different ways to play a Rogue, but what is a Rogue? Stealth, right? Basically stealth and knowledge keeping, right? Whether it's secrets or whether it's keeping you in the shadows. Like the idea is secretive stealth, right? Is usually whether or not you're an assassin, you're information, you're a thief, stealth and secrecy are your main thing. Yeah. So I would think like if we're doing a role play feat, it would want to be somewhere around that, but like obviously you can just keep a secret. Like you can't really say my class roleplay features.
Secret keeping abilities.
Yeah. Ooh. Class roleplay feat for Rogue. You have a bonus to deception when inferring you know something. So like when you want someone to believe you know something, like a secret, but you don't, that's when you get like a bonus to your deception roll.
So you're trying to reveal the secret.
But you're so good. Yeah, you're so good at knowing secrets. The idea is that your class feat is like, hey man, like if someone doesn't think you know something, you can make them believe you know it even without saying it.
So you get a bluff check.
Yeah, you basically get a bonus to bluffing that you know something you don't. But it like as long as like it's like yeah. So being able to bluff that you know something that you don't. But if you as a player can figure out a way to use that in order to get someone to talk about it.
Listen,
that's one thing. But just the idea of someone not believing you know something or someone Or like, you don't know, like someone's like, you don't know that, like you need a handshake, like you don't think I know the handshake, like what do you mean? It's like, man, I not only do I not know like I know the handshake, I was there when they made the handshake 15 years ago on February. Yeah, you remember that when they were there, like the big guy, yeah, he was there. I remember when he was the first one to even suggest we did it. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to basically get around them questioning whether or not you should know. Now whether that's a password, a handshake, or like I know the king, be like, you don't know the king, be like, you know what, like just some way
you're
to
the big bad evil guy, and he's got this ritual, and there's only a specific way to stop this ritual, and you're just like, yeah,
I know
exactly how to stop you.
He's like, no, I've never let anybody know that, and be like, really? Are you sure? You sure you didn't let her go? You sure when you let her get away? You sure that didn't screw you? You sure she didn't find, like, just throwing those little things out where you're just making them like, Did I? Maybe he does. You'll never get away with it. Like, and again, how is that really going to help you in the battle, right? It's not. Maybe you'll make, if you're a good DM.
Maybe it gets them to pause for the right amount of time.
Like I said, if you're a good DM and you use that role play to have fun with it, right? But like in reality, it's just it's that one could be maybe abused if you're doing it all the time. But how often do you have a role play situation where faking that you know something is going to be beneficial than knowing it, right? Like, like usually just going and adventuring.
I know that you got grounded when you were a kid. Bro, I don't.
Yeah, so that would be I think that one would be something like doing with deception or doing with your stealth aspect, right? Like, again, doesn't bonus your stealth, but always knowing what color to wear to blend in. You just have a natural ability of like, oh, where are we going? It's going to be a full moon. Okay, so you want stone rust gray. You do not want black, because tonight with them, just for some reason you just know just what colors go perfect with stealth, for whatever thing.
You've developed the perfect camo for all situations.
Just something like that. I think would just be I think that would be good for rogue. Paladin roleplay class feature.
Paladin. The Holy Warriors. Strong. Devout. Very passionate, generally speaking, about whatever it is that they are after and or seeking.
That's true. Like a paladin may I don't so this would actually, so a paladin, maybe their class feature is that they have a bonus knowledge, or they just have an abundance of knowledge about any particular areas, like religious affiliations. So they just happen to know who's like the majority of belief in this area, who are the main temples, where they're located. Just maybe they just have a big boost to religious information, religious checks of an area. I mean, that kind of already just goes in with boosting religion, though. That would kind of just be a religion check.
Relatively, yeah. I think maybe they have increased knowledge about the, what do you call it, the pantheon, the a lot of the lore behind like the gods, and
but wouldn't that still, I think that would still just be under the religion check. Ooh. Here's a really interesting one for roleplay. As a paladin, no matter where you are, you can always find volunteer work. Like you just
someone's always willing to
hire you for something, and you're always willing to do it free. But again, for roleplay purposes, you're trying to look for people in town, but you have this paladin. Well, hey man, let me just go pick up a couple jobs. Let me go clean out some stables. Let me go, bartend, and let me get in with the locals. While I'm doing that, I'll ask around. We'll ask some questions. Maybe I'll get all of us jobs. But as just the general paladin, because they just want to do things. They want to volunteer their time. They want to be helpful to the towns they go to. So that could be used to gain favor with towns, to get information. But that's also exactly what a paladin would want to do. Just see someone helping in need. Seeing a partially burned building helps repair it. But through that, maybe they get some info. Maybe they get a free meal. Maybe they get a place to stay. Class feature that benefits the roleplay aspect of the game, but doesn't really do anything for the progression.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Okay.
Because I like the idea of if the players are creative enough, they can use it. Yeah. But how do you abuse giving free labor? You know what I mean? It's not really an abuse. It's just more of a, even if you go to every single town and volunteer your time to make the town better, to immediately get information. Am I really gonna be upset that you're trying to make High Point a better place?
Go ahead, get you some, bro.
You know what I mean? It's not like you're trying to do the thief thing where you're like, every time you go into a town, you're like, I go straight to the bar and I listen for thieves' cant. Who's talking? You know what I mean? Like, because there are players like that who are like, I go straight to the bar. Who's talking about jobs? I want to know this. Like, it's like, that's not how it works, right? But if you're just a constant paladin where I'm like, I go to the orphanage and I'm going to go do some time there.
Unless
like,
you're only helping out nefarious individuals. You just go to all the shady places. Hey, man, I'll do some work for you for free. Hey, man, I'll get in with you.
Oh, but that would be actually fucking hilarious. You always intentionally try to find the sleaziest volunteer work just so you could find your... Oh, man, that would be hilarious.
So, I don't know how much this can be used as inspiration for what we're talking about, but earlier today, I heard about a really, really, really cool idea for a warlock. Mm. And basically what it was is, instead of a warlock that just has a patron, that there is a warlock that is a patron in training.
I've heard of that.
So basically, it's like, hey, this patron is like on its way out, or whatever the case may be, and they need to find a replacement, so they're building you up, and it's actually like a symbiotic relationship. Because a lot of warlock packs, traditionally, you end up fighting your patron at the end, and they're holding something over you.
Right, like, but this is one of those different things where it's a succession. Yes, you are the chosen one.
You guys want to be here in this.
That would be a great campaign idea. Just as, like, when I talk about, like, making personal agendas for characters, like, you have the party agenda, you have the campaign you're playing, but that would be a great personal agenda. Is this campaign, your leveling up isn't to level up to be a great fighter, it's to replace your patron. I've heard a lot of interesting ideas with warlocks. Like, I've heard different ideas of, like, warlocks making pacts with different types of entities, not just evil ones. Mm-hmm. Making pacts with other humans. I heard one
players made a pact with a fae goddess.
Oh yeah. That's that. I have that in my realm as well. I've heard of, like, pacts with other mortals, but the two of the funniest ones I heard of one where it was a reverse pact where the patron swore fealty to the warlock.
Interesting.
So it was like the patron, like it was like basically the entity was like bored and was just like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna worship you now. What do you need, my master?" And so the warlock, just whatever, he gets his powers because the patron is basically like heel and stepping him, not the other way around. So the warlock isn't begging for power; the warlock is demanding the power, and the patron's just like, I was bored. I'm letting him think he rules me. So that was a funny one. And then there was another one where it was like two warlocks swore to each other, but neither knew that they were just mortal warlocks. So they were just cycling each other. They were feeding off of each other. So it was just they were both siphoning. So basically they both had power. So one would siphon power off the other, but then they would siphon it back, so they would basically swap power.
That's crazy.
So
going back to the other one, what if you're training to be a warlock, or you're training to be a patron? What if you're the current patron? What if you're not the only one? It's almost like a game show, and there's like a bunch of other warlocks that are trying to become this patron. And at the end, you gotta see which one of you is the best. And whoever wins, all the other warlocks, you become their patron.
Dude, so what if that was like not necessarily a one shot, but a whole campaign idea? You make a group of warlocks that all have the same patron, and they're sent off on a big quest. But this quest is a test of, like, you started up with, you were my top chosen. Mm-hmm. There is an utmost importance. We must overtake, overtake this other evil deity or whatever, but I can only entrust this to you and no one else. And you send them off, they level up, they do all these great things, and at the end of the campaign, that's when the big reveal of you're the successor now. What do you do to the others? Or even or even more fun. Be like, if it's a party of 6, there's like 4 left, whatever, and you're like, okay, you're the chosen one. One of these will be your apprentice. The other 2 will fuel you for the future. Make your choice now. And you have to kill 2 of your party members and absorb their power, and then the next one becomes your first apprentice. Like you said, you become the patron, and that is your very first. But how fucked would that be? And then that's it. That's it. The game ends, and now you get a new patron and a follower. But like, imagine that whole party, the whole time you guys are just fighting together, thinking that you all are fighting for your patron, and at the end he turns you all on each other and goes, no. Like,
I would love that so much.
Like either he makes them just at the very end fight each other. It's like, now turn on each other, or do that thing where it's like you finally let them know who's the winner, and then you're like, now choose your first follower and sacrifice the others to yourself. Like, that's the or you must sacrifice or however many survive. The idea is that I've chosen you. In order for us to exchange power, an exchange of power must be given equally, right? So for him to give power and for you to take power, you need 2 sacrifices. So no matter how many party members are left, the result is you have to choose 2 of them.
I'd be like, all right, guys, which 2 of you want to survive?
But like, oh yeah, or just become the patron, just instantly.
Make them watch them fight out. Whichever 2 survive, those are the ones that.
But like that would be so fucking cool though. It's just that total mindfuck at the end of, now you get to choose who lives and who dies. Who lives follows you for eternity, and who dies becomes your power. Like, man, depending on how that party, like that gaming party happened, that would be some sick. That would be interesting. Interesting.
But I mean, so I like the way you brought that up, because I thought that you can, because the traditional idea of a warlock is, hey, some otherworldly being has this power over me, and I'm doing their bidding and all this, that, and the third. So it's like, all right, a lot of the role play would be some sort of animosity between you and your patron, or or something like that. But just the fact that there are other ways to think about like that type of relationship or that type of class, so that it's like, all right, maybe some of these relationships are positive. Maybe some of them are symbiotic. Maybe
absolutely. So, are you familiar with an anime called Kaza no Stigma?
I'm not sure. I have to see some art.
So it's one of those animes where the concept and the idea behind it is like 10 times better than the anime itself. Like, it's a cool anime. I suggest watching it, but it's more of a drama anime and not like an action packed. But the potential behind it is awesome, right?
I have not seen this one. Okay.
But so when I started thinking about my warlock class, like how I wanted to split up how warlocks, because I don't mind the warlock from D&D point of view of like, because if you think about it, a warlock in D&D is basically a non-deity cleric, right?
Yeah.
Because clerics basically go to a deity. They make a pact with being a higher level follower, and the god grants them abilities to use their power, right? And that's all the warlock is doing. A warlock is just getting power granted from a higher power. It's just not always a deity or a god, following type deity, right? Could be a different deity of any imaginable power that's able to grant power, right? Mm-hmm. Which is why you could technically be, a warlock of a mortal. As long as that mortal is powerful enough to charge you, there's no reason why you couldn't.
Shoot, man, like some 10th level or 20th level wizard being a warlock or a patron or something.
And that's the idea, right? So there's really no limits to that. And a patron is just exactly what a cleric is, just for a, non-religious type deity, right? Like a deity that gets power not from followers. And that's really the biggest difference, is there's just a difference in what they're offered. Yeah, so warlocks are really interesting because with Causa No Stigma, they have the concept called contracts. So the whole anime is based around like family lineages have access to certain magics. Main character didn't have any access to the magic from his family, basically got banished, blah blah blah, because you're not worth it if you can't do the magic.
Obviously.
And then he comes back, like so there's like everyone has different elements and stuff, and so he comes back. Main character comes back, kind of in disrespectfully, kind of just like comes back and everyone's like, you've been banished and you don't just belong here, blah blah blah. And then he finally comes back to prove that he has magic, but he comes from the people that can do fire, and he comes back doing wind magic, which is not only like not supposed to be possible, but it's also like an insult at the same time. So it's like, you're from the Fire Clan, not like, how dare you touch wind, but how fucking can you touch wind? Like, not only could you not, so it's this whole thing, but he came back to prove that he was stronger. Like, y'all ain't shit. Like, you're it doesn't matter. But yeah, so they go into this concept where he made a contract, a pact with the like goddess of the wind, like the actual wind entity. And through that contract, he basically calls upon it. So he doesn't just have access to it. He has to actually like activate it. He calls upon the contract, and with that, he's activates his like superpowers to then access like his wind magic, which is just way more powerful than anyone in his family. And again, it's not like a combat oriented one, but it's just such a cool fucking like concept behind it. So I was really influenced by that, but it was kind of minimal. So that's when I really started looking at, I wanted to implement that, but I wanted to figure out how is that any different than a warlock. And I do have an idea that I've been playing around with where there is like there's the standard warlock from D&D, which is just a patron fed, power. I have my warlock, which is more around the ability to absorb different types of magic. So you can basically, whereas you're normally maxed out at 3 classes, a warlock can infinitely continue to take more magic classes. Each one gets capped at a certain point. So once they've absorbed it, I think we've gone over this before, but the idea is, you can multi-class as a warlock, and you can have multiple classes. And then basically you take a warlock, and then you can multi-class 2 more times into, like, let's say bard and wizard, right? Well, let's say you level all of that up to a certain point. Let's say you have like 3 levels in bard and 8 levels in wizard, and you want to take on a new type of magic. Well, you can only triple class. So let's say you wanted to take on, being a druid. You want druid magic. So in order to do that as a warlock, you have to cap out one of your current magic sets. So you have, 8 wizard, but let's say you want to keep going wizard. But let's say you really only wanted the 3 levels in bard. You absorb bard. You now take that in. So you're a tri-level, right? You're a warlock, bard, wizard. You absorb bard. Now you are just a multi-class of wizard, a warlock wizard with a tertiary now open. And then you can add in druid. Now you're still triple classing. But by absorbing bard, you still keep the 3 levels in bard like available, but you can never increase bard again. So the idea is that for a warlock in my realm, they're the only ones who can break the aspect that most people can, only master a magic or dabble. They're the only ones that can touch all magic. That's why it makes them extremely powerful, but it also limits them. They can only max out at level 10 in any of them. And once they absorb, they can never get better. So if you want to be a level 3 bard and absorb, you'll always have 3 levels in bard as a warlock. So you'll be a warlock with 3 levels in bard, 5 levels in sorcerer.
So is a warlock the only class that has a hard cap?
In what sense?
Like, so theoretically, they can touch any type of magic, but they can only go to level 10 in any one of those types of magic.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm calling like their hard cap. You can't do anything more than that.
As long without new magic, you would have to go and discover new magic to continuously multi-class but yeah, essentially, the goal of a warlock, like the ultimate goal of a warlock, is to be capped out. It is the idea that you are a level 10 in everything.
I don't want to say common, because obviously it wouldn't be common, but is that unheard of?
Yes. Legend has it, only one person's ever been able to do it. and it's only a legend as far as anybody knows. Like, there is a legend of someone doing it, but whether or not that legend is believed, most think that it is just... Most people believe that it is a legend designed by those that wanted this to give themselves a reason to continue going after it, right? Like, it's a legend to get people to do this, not a legend to prove that it can be done.
What is... Wizard's your raw magic one?
Yeah, based off the Dresden Files.
What's a capped out level 10 wizard look like?
Like, from a warlock point of view, like if they had all 10.
If they had 10 levels in wizard, specifically, like, what would that look like for a warlock? Like, what would they be able to do? What would they probably be limited? Because, like, basically what you're doing is just slinging around raw magic. They just,
for the most part,
have a limit to how much of that raw magic they can...
A limit to how much they can do. So when it comes to the wizard, it doesn't progress the same way as the other ones would in terms of, like, proper benchmarks, because it's more based off of the Dresden Files. It's similar to how as you go through the book series, you see his magic develop over time and get better. So with it, it's much more of a role play based, kind of like the sorcerer, where whatever the player is doing with it is what they're going to get better at. So let's say they were constantly using fire magic, constantly. At any point, they could rip open a hole and do a gust of wind, as long as they understood how to work that. But at level 10, that gust of wind will still be the same gust of wind as it was at level 1. But if they've messed with fire the whole time, instead of it just being a haphazard fireball that might go in the direction they want, now they're at level 10, they're basically casting fireball, like, with their eyes closed, hitting targets 100 feet away. So it's like it's right. More controlled, but it's still not like you're not making, a fire unicorn appear, gallop across, and, stab someone, but you are fine tuning what you can control and where you can control it.
So I guess my question is, does that come with experience?
Yes.
And just the knowledge of having used it over and over again?
Yes, Wizard is a roleplay based class, so you don't just get levels in it and no more. That's why that's one of those ones where it's really based on who's using it and what you're using with it, right?
So, hypothetically, if a warlock were to master or were to cap out their wizardry, they would still have the ability to tear open that hole and use air magic, even though they had focused on fire magic. But would they still be able to get up to a level 10's power in air magic after they capped it off?
No.
So even though they gained all that experience with air magic, it wouldn't grow at all. You wouldn't actually get the benefits of that experience because it's capped out.
Right. So the idea would be, like, if you were focusing on, like, fire magic up to level 10, the best you could ever hope for is maybe like again, as a wizard, you can touch all of the elements. But if you've basically focused on fire and then you capped out, meaning you stopped growing in it as a warlock, you're not touching any of the other elements unless it's like kind of like an emergency, like you can do a very minimal, but you're not dabbling in all of the variations. You're pretty much only going to get what you focused on. Similar to if you are running a wizard, just because you can touch all of the elements of magic, and you'll see this as you read more of Dresden 2, you'll see that he has a set list of spells. Doesn't matter from book 1 to book 15. There's like 3 spells he will use in every single book. But they do change and get better as he uses them. He uses a force spell. He uses fire. He uses force, fire, and then later down the road he has another one that he uses a lot. But like force and fire, he has one where he can like basically do like a force push and fire. At first, these were just like that. These are just like pushes, right, of just raw. Later in the book series, you'll find out like he can target his force push instead of just a wall. He can like specifically do like a column, like where he wants it. His fire goes from just a wall of flame and random fireballs to a like lava hot laser pointer where he can just like, freeze Frieza's like laser. He could do that now with his fire. So that's getting closer. So a level 10 Warlock Wizard would have that level of fire, but if they tried to use wind magic, they might barely get a gust to push someone over. But they would never, even though they're level 10, they would never excel because they never focused on it. But a level 10 wizard would have the same problem. Just because you're a level 10 wizard, if you spent your entire 10 levels focusing on fire magic, you can't suddenly start doing wind magic.
Right.
Because the way that Dresden describes it is, with their wizardry, it's knowledge and practice. It's constant education and practice and tinkering. So wizards are they have all of this raw magic, but it's their personal choices that will dictate their evolution, which is why Dresden doesn't just have fire. He has that force magic and fire magic, but it's not like he has all of the options of force magic and all of the options of fire. It's only what he's slowly trained himself to do. He's slowly trained himself to pinpoint his fire magic into a beam of sun-hot fire. He's slowly worked on being able to direct his force magic into smaller and smaller columns, but that doesn't mean that he's also now suddenly able to create water.
What about something to the effect of, okay, say traditionally he uses his finger to direct that sun-hot magic in a beam. Well, say he's in a situation where his arms are tied. Could he then, for whatever reason, choose to do that exact same magic but channel it through his eyes?
No.
Is that just like, no, like that's impossible? Or no, that's like he would have to train in that specific channeling for a significant period of time? It would
be exactly that. It would be the specific way that he would have to train through it. It's not like magic where it's kind of like, where normal magic spells have like symmetrical components or material components or verbal components. It's the same thing, but they're a lot more personalized. So how he represents and uses magic, I love the way that the book talks about it, because it's not so much that he has like a hand gesture that he always has to do, but the way he describes it is that it's not like recipes, right? It's not like he can take up someone else's spell and just reproduce it. Every spell, every time he uses magic, it's personal. It's his understanding of the flow of magic. So when they talk about how wizards in the Dresden Files use it, it's a gathering. So part of the spell is gathering the energies from all around you, from whatever you can pull energy from. It's gathering it inside you. Once it's inside you, you have to manipulate it. You have to form it. Once it's formed, then you have to mentally understand how you're going to use it. Then once you have that mental projection, then it's actually expelling it and getting the desired result. All of these are steps that they have to learn. So for him, directing fire is a natural process. He's learning how to do all of that. But on the fly, to change it from what he's known and practiced to shoot it out of his hand, to in the fly try to change the output to his eyes, can't just, like, you could, but the idea could also burn and become blind. You could burn your eyes and become blind. You can still do it, but if you're not trained, if you don't know what you're doing and you just willy-nilly throw magic like that, you could seriously get burned. Like something happened to him in the book series. You'll find out in several later down the road. He has a magic that he can do, and he pushes it way too far in an emergency. Something he just normally wouldn't be able to do, but he pushed through it, and he got permanently disabled for it, and then had to learn how to overcome that disability. But that was like a big deal, and I loved how they talked about it, because even he talked about how the fact of it's like, I can still do what I used to do, but now with my disability, with my injury, there's now a new barrier I have to overlearn. It's not that I can't do it, but my technique is different.
I mean, imagine if he had that thing with his hand and his hand got cut.
Exactly.
He would have a disability, he would have to.
So he still has the power. He still can do it, but retraining yourself. So it's like basically train yourself with a pistol, and then switch hands. You have all of the techniques, you have the breathing, you know how to aim, you have all of the understanding, but your left hand just doesn't know what it's doing. Like, you're right.
Doesn't have that.
So you don't lose the ability to do... You could still, technically and theoretically, shoot that weapon with your offhand. But you're not going to do it in a pinch as accurately. You'll have a lot of the fundamentals. You'll pull off something. But it won't necessarily be what you're hoping.
A warlock who learned to use that beam with their finger, and they got up to level 10 and they capped it. And they got their hand cut off.
They're fucked because
they have
they
no
are
way to learn anything other than
that is my balancing act with Warlock is Warlocks. Once you cap it, it's basically like you're capping it internally. It's almost like you're making an oath of I'm done. I will forever retain this knowledge, but this is the knowledge I retain. And it's kind of it's more of a mental gymnastics of I've learned what I need to learn. And so you're locking it in. You're like, I am good here, but my progression is over. And the whole reason is so you can be a slice of life magic user. The whole point is so instead of only getting up to 3 magics, a warlock can essentially dabble in every magic that's known to man. Every magic that's in existence. They're the only ones that can do it. But it wouldn't make it fair if they could live forever and max out on every magic user, right? They could live at level 20, everything would just be fucked. So I felt that level 10 was good. It gives you the chance to get all the best parts, like the really good parts without the end game results. But also
wish or anything crazy like that.
But also consider it's 10 fucking levels. Like how many times can you do that with one character? Like that's a lot of dedication, right? It's not a character you're going to breeze through and have, 9 different magic types by game 3. This is a long game. It was primarily designed for NPCs who I could let have the history, but it's also a fun idea that I wanted players to have.
When you say you have the 3 multi-classes,
yes.
So is Warlock considered one of your class?
Yes.
Do you level up in Warlock?
Yes.
Does Warlock cap out at 10?
No. So the way that works is, so normally when you have classes in my realm, like you can have up to 3, like in terms of multi-classing. And the only real rules is your primary can never go under your secondary. And your primary can never, your primary can be as high as you want. And I think your tertiary, your third can never be more than like 2 levels above your second, and your second can never be above your first. Like your first always has to be the highest, but your second and third can always be slightly out of whack, but your third can never be like, you can't be better than your second.
You could be a level 30 Warlock and have a level 10 and be a level 10 wizard and a level
So
10
your warlock
mage.
level comes with your caps, right? So when you become a warlock, when you have the chance to become, because essentially I would let certain players just start out as a warlock, but usually becoming a warlock, it's a whole, you have to kind of unlock it essentially. You have to learn the ritual and the rites and understanding of how to divulge the magic and how to bring it up. Basically just not anybody can just start doing this. But once you gain the warlock class, that's when you can begin the process. So you can be a fighter mage or a fighter thief, then become a warlock. But then that kind of locks you.
Become your primary class at that point?
It can, if that's what you started to go. But if you were a fighter thief and then became a warlock, you're kind of fucked. Because you can't absorb non-magical classes. So how are you going to become... So Warlock is a preparatory concept. You have to know it's coming. If you're a fighter and then decide to pick up Warlock, you're going to be a very, very slow learner. Because you're only ever going to learn one magic at a time. If you really want to max out being a Warlock, the idea is you start multi-class. You start a character with a multi-class of 2 magics. You pick up Warlock, get the first 2 to whatever level you want them. Then you absorb your first classes. That's when Warlock becomes your primary class. This is also one of the only times you can fudge the level 10 cap. Because if you take Warlock if Warlock isn't your primary, like if you didn't start your character with Warlock, it's the only time your primary can go over 10 and be absorbed into Warlock. So if you're, say, a bard druid, and then you pick up Warlock, your druid absolvement, like when you take in druid, will only ever max out at 10. So even if you're already over 10, your druid will only ever cap out at 10 once it's been absorbed. Interesting. Once it's been absorbed. It's one of the caveats. It only gets capped once it's been absorbed. Now, if you're a warlock and then you're multi-classing into other classes to absorb them, they can never go over 10. Once that you just can't go over 10, period. But if you had the class before you took on Warlock, it can be as high as it wants. If it's your primary, so you're the very first class you ever were, that can be any level upon absorption. Make sense?
And it'll stay that level upon absorption?
It's the only caveat. It's the only time an absorbed class will stay.
Your secondary, if you absorb it,
will drop.
Even if it was over,
will drop to max level 10 upon absorption. These are the balancing acts, because if you want to be a warlock, you have to give something up. You can't be a master of everything.
You have to absorb your primary class before your secondary class to still be able to absorb it at its max level.
Yes, the idea is that when you basically decide to become a warlock, the idea normally would be you would absorb your first 2 classes at once. I haven't made an official rule that you have to do that. But again, because I designed this mainly for NPCs, that's typically what happens. You start off with 2, you get to a point where you're comfortable with them, and then once you want to become a warlock, the greed usually takes over. You absorb both of yours, officially become a warlock, and then start multi-classing 2 at a time. That's the intended design. I haven't made a hard rule that says you have to, but I have thought about it, and I'm like, well, if you start off, if you're a level 20 wizard and you finally become, learn to be a warlock, why lose half of your magic?
Yeah.
But if you're a bard at level 20 and a level 15 druid, and then you want to become a warlock, something's got to give.
Yeah.
Something's got to open up in you to allow more knowledge, and that's where, okay, you're level 15. Once you absorb it to take on more magic, you're going to drop those levels. But if you don't want to, if you just absorb your primary and become a primary warlock at your, because the idea is once you absorb it, now it's your top class because it takes on that many levels. You can take on your third one. Maybe you take on sorcerer. So now you're a warlock, druid, sorcerer. Druid is still level 15. Now that you're a primary warlock, you can't level that up anymore. It's locked. It's over 10. It's locked. But
you can technically keep it there.
You can keep it at 15 as long as you don't absorb it, but you can't ever keep increasing it.
So could I just max out sorcerer to 10, absorb it, get something else, max that out to 10?
Yeah, you can keep doing that.
And just keep the...
Yes, you can keep your druid on the side as long as you don't absorb it. These are the only caveats. Is your primary magic slot.
I really like how that's set up, because it's like you got to be incredibly strategic about it. If you,
it's a life choice. Like the in game and out of game, the whole point was it's a life choice. You are fundamentally deciding that abundance of knowledge is better than mastery. So that's why you're giving these things up. Is having that mastery level knowledge gets in the way of you learning other things, right? That's my mindset. The better you are at mastering something, the more stuck in your ways you're going to be. You have to give up certain fundamentals of mastery in order to be more open to learning. So that's my concept of why your first one, it's your primary. It's the one that you stuck with from day one. You're going to get that whatever it is. Your second one, it's going to be, you can keep it. But once you become a warlock, your whole point about being a warlock is you've chose this to learn magic. I'm not going to incentivize you to only do this for 2 or 3 things and then just max out the rest.
Even though you haven't absorbed it, is your druid class technically capped in that example that we gave?
Yeah, so if you are a bard, druid, and then you pick up warlock. So let's say your bard is at 20, your druid's at 15, and you just picked up your warlock and you want to start absorbing. You absorb your bard. So now you are a 20 level warlock with 20 bard, and you are multi-classing with a 15 druid. At that moment, druid can never go up. Okay. You are done leveling up druid because you became a warlock, and druid is now at beyond level 10. It does not go down, but druid is done.
So in the same sense, if that druid was instead a wizard, you couldn't then learn those same things we were talking about, how to do things with different...
Correct. You would be locked with where you are. So strategic. If you want to take on warlock, if something is over 10, it's done. So if you're not ready and you need that a little bit higher, and that's your strategic plan is to keep a second class, that's fine.
Does that mean that warlock doesn't have any of its own class features? Like its only class feature is to be able to absorb magic?
For the most part, yes. There's
That makes a lot of sense if it is.
there's a little bit of wiggle room because its main class feature is understanding of magic. There's a little bit more wiggle room with blending magic and what they can do and how they can do spells. Sometimes, like, the idea too is, like, let's say you have two types of classes, like Bard and Druid or whatever. Let's say they have a similar spell. Mm-hmm. One has, like, the Bard obviously has a verbal component, but maybe the Druid one doesn't. Mm-hmm. If the Warlock has both of them at the right level, maybe he doesn't have to worry about the verbal component. He can mix and match a little bit. His understanding of magic is beyond and, more complicated and more complex, which is why you can't do the higher level versions, but you're really in the weeds of the basics, right? You really understand them. So as a direct, no, they don't. I wouldn't say they have any direct specific class features because it isn't designed to be a standalone class.
Yeah.
Like, it's not meant, you're not meant to, like, as I said, under rare circumstances, I would allow a particular player to start a character as a Warlock, but it was never designed to be that way.
It was, that would be, I don't want to say, it would not be beneficial for you to start as a Warlock. Because
you'd have to be a Warlock with 2 and then start from there. But again, the whole point is to pick up the knowledge you can be, and the idea is you're greedy enough to dedicate your life. Like, I really liked the idea that this isn't just something you do just to min-max. This is, you want this role play option, right? Like I said, like with the Wizard, the Sorcerer, and the Warlock, those specifically are what I like to call role play classes. Like, those 3 I created specifically, excuse me, because they're not made to be played on paper. They're not made to be played by charts and by, like, here's how they progress. They're meant to be played through and decided by the player how it's going to manifest. The rules on how they work are what I have set in stone. The progression is all for the player.
So would you say those 3 classes in particular would be, because they're all along that same vein, would you say they're harder to play together or easier to play together? Like, if you
in the same party, you mean?
No, like if you wanted to be a Warlock who was also a Wizard who was also a Sorcerer.
That is 100% based on the player, because your ability to understand my mechanics and understand my rule sets with those classes is really what's going to dictate whether or not it's going to be a walk in the park to you. I mean, also consider, do you think it would be easier to play a Warlock that has 5 different spell lists to choose from? Like, think about how hard it is to choose when you finally reach level 7.
What I like about those 2 classes, they don't really have spell lists like that.
True. And that's why it could be easier for you. But like I said, if you're the kind of person who likes to see it all out in front of you, if you become a Warlock and you're looking at the Bard list, the Cleric list, and the Wizard list, and you're like, well, what do I have access to? And it's like, all of it. Like, well, how do I use it? Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And then you get into the fun part where, because I haven't really had anybody play it yet, I haven't had to worry too much about it. But then it gets into the fun part of logistics of, you're all these things. So if you're a level 10 Bard and a level 10 Wizard, how many spell slots do you have? Warlocks are fucking scary. Warlocks can do a lot. They have access to a lot, but there has to be a balance, because you can't just say that they can cast 9 spells in a turn. But you also don't want to give them an infinite amount of spells that they can only barely ever use, right? Yeah. So playing a Warlock is one of those ones where this is why it's a roleplay aspect, because some of the hard and fast rules can't be hard and fast.
Yeah.
Because then it just gets too much paperwork. So it's that whole aspect of... That's why I also do the capping, because at least that way it's more of a, now you know what you know, now you have a set pool of what you can pull from and nothing more. Because it also helps me and the player know what they have access to. Yeah. If you only made it to level 3 Bard and you capped, there's never a question. This is the list of you get. That's it. That's your Bard. That's all he gives you. Yeah. You'll never change. And that's it. That's so much easier, because as you play through it, you're only ever really dealing with 2 pieces of magic at a time. And then once you cap them, whatever we've discussed before that is now all you have access to. There is no more deciding. So it makes it a little bit easier, because once you got what you wanted out of that class, you're done. And now you have it. Now you have that list of, that's what I can do from that class. So Warlocks have, I guess, more class features in the sense that they might be able to cast more magic, more types of magic, maybe more magic more often. But again, it was never designed as a standalone class. It was always designed as a...
catalyst. Almost.
Yeah, as a plot point to get you interested, so you take that dive and start going into it.
Interesting. But technically, you could multi-class as 3 of those things without Warlock and max them as high as they want to go.
Correct. As long as you, as long as you do it in the right order. But yeah,
Right.
there wouldn't technically be anything stopping you from taking all 3 of those roleplay classes.
Well, I mean, like I said, not Warlock, but it would probably be...
No, but if you took like Sorcerer, Bard, and Wizard, specifically, yeah, you could just like, because Bard's a little bit of a roleplay-esque if you do it the right way, which is why there's the asterisk, because Bard works normal. In my opinion, Bard works normal until you reach level 10. That's when it's decided whether or not you're playing a high point Bard or a D&D Bard. Because at level 10 is where a Bard has the opportunity to start becoming a high point Bard, like being able to mess with magic on the way that we've talked about before.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Let me just ask this. From what you know of what's happening with Olo, how likely do you think, how possible do you think that future, like, that making that decision for him will be? Or is the track that he's on one that is likely to steer him one direction or the other?
Oh, do you mean like, is he on the path to be a high point Bard?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. With everything that you guys have done, he's definitely on that track.
Okay.
I mean, especially just with the feats that you've already done and the things that you're involved in. Like, yeah. It also goes along with the storyline that you wanted, but yeah. It basically it's not set in stone. I'm not saying you are destined and will be that, but are you on the right track, and is Olo doing all the things that he needs to do? Yeah, like he's getting the attention and the notoriety that would be required for someone to take that path.
Very, very interesting. Okay.
Well, I think we got through most of them. I think all we didn't do was the Wizard and the Ranger. I think we've covered all of the others.
Yeah, we talked about all the other ones for a little bit. To be honest, I don't really know what most people have to say about Rangers. I mean, I love the concept of Rangers. I love what they're supposed to be. I just, especially in
here's my hot take on Rangers. It was a great concept, but the fundamental way people approach D&D and the story and the campaigns and the roleplay, there's just no place for them. Like, Rangers are great, especially with certain subclasses. Rangers can be really fun, but as a base character, no one plays D&D properly to benefit from a Ranger. You know what I mean? Like, most DMs don't have you roll for finding food and doing all all the things that a Ranger gets is all roleplay and narrative based, and it just doesn't really set anything else aside unless you build the campaign around that.
Yeah.
So that's my hot take, as I think Ranger is better suited when you really subclass specifically, but it takes the right kind of narrative, and after a while, like what can you do really with that narrative of being a tracker and just knowing, like, you know, with the D&D narrative that most people go through, the skill sets of a Ranger don't really fall into place.
The idea of like making them into like a bounty hunter, like almost like a Boba Fett type, person where they
being able to be a tracker, yeah,
like find people, be really.
But that's where you need, like, most gameplay is go to this town. Well, then where are you going to go? Well, let's go to the tavern because that's where everyone's there. Let's talk to the bartender. Let's talk to the mayor. Let's talk to the guy's best friend. Who's running a D&D campaign where it's like, as you come across the bend and you turn the tree, you see what looks like it might be the remnants of an old fire pit. And then, it's only a day old. They must be close. Like, no one runs that D&D campaign. Everyone runs the go to town, talk to the bartender, talk to this guy. Okay, you found a note. Oh, you found an address. Where are you supposed to be a Ranger in this storyline, right? And again, it's no one's fault. It's not like people are doing it intentionally, but like, even D&D books didn't present us with opportunities. Like, they built all of these cool classes and cool feats and stuff, but a lot of the times it's like, did you ever ask yourself where we could use this? Or did you just, again, and this is, again, the beyond the book thinking, right? Is if you read something in D&D that doesn't sound like it fits, it's because it's not meant to fit what they're talking about. It's meant to be yet another example for you to change the story to make it fit, right? And that's where it's kind of funny, because there's a lot of tropes out there and a lot of like jokes about like certain creatures or certain items that D&D has created that just seem like what is even the point? And it's like that's the idea though, guys. It's like either A, you're taking it too seriously and thinking all of these things are what you have to incorporate, or you're looking at it too literal from this is the scenery they presented you and this is the item they presented you and they don't match. And it's like, well, that's fine. Maybe this isn't meant for here. Maybe it's meant for somewhere else. It's not meant for you. But that's where that mindset of like, you gotta find out, not only does it fit what you're currently doing, but think about where it could fit. Like that's the beyond the book, right? Don't wait for the book to tell you where it's supposed to go. Figure, I don't know. It's
like it, yeah.
It's kind of like how I do my encounters, right? I don't look at a book and go, these are the enemies I want you to fight. I look at it from a point of view of where are you? What's most likely going to be in between you and this? And what has the motivation to give a shit about you, right? Like just deciding, oh, these group of raiders are suddenly going to come across your encampment. It's like raiders usually go after like towns and settlements and places with like farms and gold. Why are 5 raiders coming across like 3 people sleeping in the middle of a forest? That's not what raiders do, right? Or you're in the middle of a forest and you're getting attacked by something that you would find in a cave because that's what the DM wanted the encounter to be. And it's like that,
even think about like us as, people hanging around. Like we will at our homes go out of our way to attack bugs, insects, flies, whatever. But if we're just out in the world, for the most part,
you're going to avoid it or just let it be on its own.
Like, I'm not going to just go out of my way to come bother you. You know what I mean? Like, I might even give you a wide berth because I don't want to mess with that spider or that snake or whatever it is that's over there. You know what I mean? So it's like, a lot of the times, stuff's going to leave you alone. Not necessarily everything that exists out there is just going to come looking for a fight.
Right. And I think a lot of DMs, I don't want to say like this is the DM's fault. I think a lot of the narrative too of D&D pushes people towards the mindset that, oh, there needs to be a combat here, or like I think people put too much pressure on involving combat in every gaming session, or trying to make combat more intensive and not as relatable, right? Like that's why I love throwing cheap and easy combat at my players, right? Like ones that I know they're going to win and not even be a challenge, because that's just what makes sense. You know what I mean? Like you're going to get robbed by you're going to get robbed by a level 3, thief, because he doesn't know any better. He doesn't know like, again, I don't understand the mindset of like developing a game where it's like, oh, you walk through a town, you're level 1. Here's a level 1 bandit that, tries to steal from you. Mm-hmm. And then a couple gaming sessions later, you go back through the town, you're level 5. A level 2 level 5 brutes come over and they try to hustle you because they think that you're the wrong person. Well, then you come back into town and you're level 10. Well, some level 10 guards think that you are the mysterious. Why is it that everyone at my level is always coming up to me? Like, I get it. That's how games progress, right? You're level 10. The enemies are level 10. Mm. But what I don't like...
how the world progresses.
Right. Like, it makes sense if I'm getting closer and closer to the BBEG's castle. And I'm getting better and worse of his, of his guards. But if I'm walking through the same goddamn town that I have walked through for the last 4 years of my character's life, over the last 10 levels, and every time I walk into this town, I get into a fight with someone equally as strong as me, that doesn't make sense. I don't like that. I don't think that makes sense. If I walk into a town at level 1 and fight people that are level 5, and then at level 4 fight people that are level 5 or 6, and at level 7, why am I still fighting people at level 10? Where were they before? They should be level 5 and 6. And then when I'm level 10, they should still be level 5 and 6 unless I piss someone off and now I'm fighting the boss. And then the boss comes in and he's level 10. And then that was really the right-hand man. Those are ways that you progress it. But you don't just say, you're this level, therefore you're doing this. Like, seriously, if your players are at level 10 and they circle back in the campaign to like their hometown or this place they started, and there was like a little fight that they did, let them do that same fight again, but as a level 10. You know what I mean? Like, they fought some farmer or they fought some local. That local's not training. That local's not doing everything. Just let them fight the bully, right? They've been gone for town for 2 years. They come back. The town bully's there, tries to ruffle them up, and all of a sudden you like put them on the ground and realize, I'm an adventurer now, bitch. Like, those are moments where I noticed this when I was gaming a long time ago, and I actually brought this up with a couple of my DMs where I had mentioned that aspect where I felt that there was a disconnect between what we were trying to achieve with our character development and what we were actually achieving, right? Like, how many times have you been in a gaming session where you're developing this character, you see something cool that an NPC did or another character did, or you just have this really cool idea of like, I want to get to a point where I can pull something cool off. But then you realize, it's like, man, I'm level 15. I have this cool idea that I've had since level 3. I never get to pull it off. Like, I'm never the stronger guy. I'm never the one who has the upper hand, right? Like how many times has a DM thrown an NPC at you who was obviously stronger, so in a cutscene or in something you couldn't control, they did something so cool or so uber powerful that you wanted to emulate. But then you realize, you know what? Why haven't I ever been around people that were so low level I looked cool? Or why haven't I been against someone who I could just pick up by the face and toss to the side of me? I don't get to do that. Every time I do that, I start an encounter. He did that to me, and I wasn't allowed to roll initiative. You know what I mean? Like, some of the times I think DMs miss the fact that these are cool things to set the tone, but you're also setting an expectation that these things can happen, right? Like, if you let an NPC, like, literally pick one of the characters up, throw them to the side, and that's end of the cutscene, no initiative. But every single time they've ever tried to do that, there's an initiative roll, and there's a battle. It's like, okay, cool, so you just get to let your NPCs do whatever you want. And after a while, it's like, what am I fighting for? Like I got to a point where I'm like, man, I've been gaming here for a year. I'm like level 12. And I've been trying to do this one maneuver, and I have yet to fight anything that's not 2 levels above me, which means I'll never get to pull this off. What am I trying it for? Like, what is my drive? Like, if the fights are only ever going to be a challenge, what's the point of getting better, right? Like, if you stayed at level 10 and never went to level 15, the fights would never get harder. They'd stay the same challenge. They'd be hard, but they would never get harder. Yeah. It's almost like you could, basically, with that mindset, why doesn't everybody just reach level 5, get your best feats, and then never level up again and just go fight the BBEG at level 8? Why face him at level 20 and let him be level 30? Just face him at level 5 when he's level 8 and easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're going to express the game that way, it makes it feel cheap. It makes it feel like you're always striving for better, but never reaching it. Whereas for me, I so I talked about my DMs. I talked to my DMs, and most of them just gave me the cold shoulder. Most of them are just like, yeah, but that's just how it works. But it's like, no, you don't get it. Like, when you throw us at an early battle that we can't win, or let an NPC manhandle us, or let them do something that's like, you know, critical, like, you know, like cinematic even, throw it at the players to do that once in a while. Throw them 20 first level peasants. Just throw them at them. Let them just laugh as they get pummeled by 1 damage, by 1 hit punches, by 1 HP punches. Let them get hit 50 fucking times with 1 HP punches, and let them laugh it off as they cleave their longsword across 9 people. Let them do it. Let them do something that wouldn't be normally allowed in combat, but in this one case, just let them have it. And I don't mean rule of cool, but I mean, like, if you're obviously, like, have the upper hand, let him do something that's not a standard maneuver. Let him, like, again, you're up against 20 peasants. They're all on me. Can I just fucking cleave and hit 9 of them? Fucking do it. Cleave and hit 9 of them. They're peasants. It's not like I'm going to let you now have a 9-person cleaving feat or action in combat. Yeah. But this moment right here, fucking do it. Feel like that badass, right? Like, I want you to have those moments where it's like, you know, sometimes it's nice to, like, play the role of the NPC where you want the players not to know, like, to question whether or not they should fuck with this NPC. You're like, this is just a shopkeep, but, like, the way he's talking, like, maybe he's, like, level 30. But, like, it gets boring when every fucking NPC is like that. When every NPC is that whole, yeah, this could be your TPK fight. You want to push it? It's fucking boring, because then it's like every NPC is protected. It literally feels like every NPC has that, plot armor, because all the DM really has to do, and let's face it, DMs, like, we have this power. All you have to do is make them question whether or not this is actually the NPC you think it is. All you have to do is throw something in there that makes them think that this could be one of your hideaway level 50s. But if you do that for every NPC, they're never going to have fun with it, right? And if that's what you want, if you're the DM who doesn't want the confrontations, you don't want to lose NPCs like that, or you just don't want to deal with it, fine. Yeah. But I'm not about that, right? If I want to do that once in a while, like, there are some NPCs who just have that personality. But if there's just an NPC you just want to just grab and just go, you know what? I think this is too much priced. I think it's only 10 gold. What do you think? Yeah, 10 gold? That's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why not? Why can't you do that once in a blue moon? I'm not saying let them abuse it, but I just feel like when you don't let the players fulfill some of those, like, desires of becoming, like, the badass, it kind of diminishes all their hard work.
Yeah, I do feel that a lot. Like, I mean, like, not necessarily as a player, and I think mostly because, I've been fortunate to have, like, the DMs that I've been working with, at the very least, willing and wanting their players. There have been a couple of times, especially when I did, like, online D&D, where it was just about them and their world and what they wanted, but I definitely like the fact that it's the game is more than just a list of rules.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people come at it, it's like, hey, if the rules didn't say it, you can't do it. Or it's just like, I just want to sit here and arborate all of these lists of rules, but at the same time being able to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And that's not really an experience that a lot of people want to be a part of.
Well, in that same vein, it's not just a list of rules, but it's also not just one person's story. Like, again, this is something that we talk about all the time on the stream.
Yeah.
Is DMs, you are the page master, you are the story keeper, but you have to be willing to let the players add to that story, right? You can't let them. You're not an audiobook. You're an interactive experience, and not just that your game isn't just those, just like your game is not simply a set of rules. The story is not simply a set of instructions that you're giving out, right? If a player wants to mess with an NPC, it shouldn't always be, met with some sort of, like, punishment just because they want to do that. Reward them once in a while. Let them fulfill those fantasies and let them have that story play out that way. I feel like, I feel like a lot of DMs out there, if you throw your characters every once in a while a situation or even a full-on encounter in combat that is just way out of balance in their favor, you will see, especially if they don't see it coming, especially if it's just not obvious, if you're not just like, hey, here's 30 spiders, they only have one attack per round, only 3 of them attack every round anyway, and they only do 1 hit of damage. Have fun. Like, don't make it obvious that you're just letting them win a fight, but do something to where you know that they're going to shine and they're going to go out of their way to, like, do a good job. Again, make them feel like the heroes that they're trying to fucking become. Yeah. That's the whole point of D&D, right? Your adventurers, your heroes. Whether you're good or bad heroes doesn't matter, right? You are trying to become these notable people. And I feel like a lot of the times that creativity can be stifled if people feel like the NPCs and the encounters are always just slightly stronger. Not to the point to where we always lose, but they're just always stronger. And why can't I be that one that just I'm stronger than everybody? Because you don't want to wait till the end of the game for that, because it's like playing an open world game after you've beat the storyline and there's nothing left. You're just like, you can roam around the city. But it's like, but all the missions are done. Like, there's nothing to do here. And that's the idea, right? Is don't wait till the game's over to be like, you're the heroes of the land. Nobody can touch you. Be like, oh, because everybody I ever fought brought me down to 1 HP every fight. So I don't know about nobody can touch me. But again, throw them a fight where it's just, that they're low-level people. Or, hell, throw them a fight and just, like, make it completely one-sided. Like, start the fight and then just have the bad guy be like, there was supposed to be 2 of them. and then there's 6, right? Like, just do something funny where the players just get, they know they have the upper hand, but it's not obvious you're being handed a win. But let them feel like they're the hero. They're the ones who just get to be the ones that are throwing everybody around, the ones that really, it's great when they have a good combat and they turn the tide and they take over. Those are great. But if you force them to earn it like that every time, it does kind of start to feel like, well, what's the point of all my hard work? Because literally the fights are just as hard as they've ever been. And I also know that from a player point of view, it just feels boring sometimes. Like when the fight at level 1, the fight at level 5, and the fight at level 10 literally all feel the same way. The only difference is how long they last because there's more hit points. But each and every fight, basically I was almost dead. I used up all of my abilities. I used up all my spells. And I needed that one final crit to win. It just gets like, it doesn't matter how powerful I get. It doesn't matter how many attacks per round I get. It doesn't matter what spells I have. It's still taking this long. It's still getting, and that's not bad. You don't want, one-sided battles all the time. But it just gets boring when the battles literally feel like the difficulty doesn't change.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I'm getting. I think that's like the big point I'm trying to make is when you scale equally, the difficulty technically never changes, right? Like if you always put the enemies one level above your team, they're always going to be slightly more powerful, but not too powerful to lose. But that still means they're always slightly more powerful.
Yeah.
It's always that challenge is going to be literally that exact same. And this is why we all complain about like CR. Like CR sucks. There's no good way to use challenge rating. And this is why, again, I very personalize all of my encounters. And my encounters vary from very easy to extremely hard. But it's all situational. I don't make them vary based on, well, you had an easy one last time, so you can't have an easy one this time. Like, that's bullshit. Yeah. That's too metagamey for me as a DM. Like, I don't, just because you guys, mollywopped 3 of my last, encounters, I'm not going to suddenly make this one intentionally 10 times harder because I'm mad at you. No, This encounter is going to be this encounter because that's what's in this world. It doesn't matter that you guys got lucky the last couple times. If this is an easy encounter for you, then it was supposed to be an easy encounter. That's okay because you guys should know you earned the other one. And then you should also feel good that, hey, we are fucking strong. Not everybody we meet is as powerful or more powerful than us. Yep. And that's, I know for me, I know I just keep repeating myself, but I just remember as a player, that was one of those things after like 3 or 4 years, it just was like, this kind of sucks. I have literally spent all of this time trying to be this uber powerful character, and I never get to see it. Like, and maybe that's a better way to put it. It's you put all this work in to be this super powerful character, but every battle it still takes you 7 rounds and 95 rolls to kill the same enemy.
Right.
And it's like, wait a second, I was taking this many hits at level 1, and I'm still taking this many hits at level 5. So at level 15, am I still going to take this long to kill the same type of person?
Is there going to be some point where where I hit the bell of the curve?
Yeah, where I start to see that my power is great. Yeah, it's that whole thing of you try to be more powerful, but you never get to see it. So why are you working so hard? Like, I want to, I like that encouragement or that, just that positive reinforcement of, see? There are people out here that wouldn't even want to mess with you. And those, again, I think they're just fun too, especially because for most players, it's also really just not, they're not ready for it. When you throw them an easy battle and they get to be like, holy shit, we're stomping, cool. It's like they're expecting something super difficult and they're just like, holy shit, this was kind of fun. Like, hell yeah, we did that. Mm-hmm. But again, that could be boring too. You don't want to do that too often.
Yeah, it's all.
But again, it's giving the those pleasure points, right? It's not the pain points, it's the pleasure points that you want to hit when it comes to the things that, again, that they've been working so hard on this. Let them show off. Let them have some fun with it. Get a couple attaboys out of it, and then they can go back to the challenging stuff, right? But reinforce that all of that hard work went somewhere.
Yeah. Very much so.
And an easy way to do this, super, super easy way to do this, do a reoccurring bad guy. Like, do like a bully or, like a rival from your small town. Have that as one of your first encounters. They're slightly, more powerful than you. Maybe they're like a level 3, level 5, while you're level 1. And then have them come back. The first time they beat you, have them come back. Maybe you're equal level now. Maybe they beat you, maybe it's a tie. Maybe something gets in the way. But then let time go by. Let plenty of time go by. Let them be level 10, level 8, 9, 10. Reoccur again. Come back, but unbeknownst to them, their bully, that reoccurring fight, they never got better. They stayed in town. They didn't adventure. So this fight that is constantly they've lost, they now get to come back and win. Mm-hmm. That right there could be a huge point to make with your players of, see, this guy, you couldn't even touch this guy the last 2 times. You came in here and in 2 hits, he's gone. Like, it's that proof that you are not where you were, even though, yes, you have the justification that because you're more powerful, you're getting the attention of more powerful people. No one's going to question that, right? But you got to have a benchmark. You got to have some milestone to show, not just numbers on a page, but give an opportunity for them to prove to themselves they know better, right? Even if it's not even a direct relationship between this is now a weaker person, but have the reoccurring encounter where you use a specific tactic or a specific feat with these with the enemies that's very difficult for them to overcome, and then let them learn it, have this combat a couple times, and then learn a strategy to overcome it, and then just completely turn the tide of battle now that strategy doesn't work on them. And again, It could be something as simple as that. You're not making the battle easy for them, but you're giving them the same thing enough to where they finally learn from it. And now instead of being the dick and saying, well, now that you learned that, we're going to change everything up so you lose again. Let them win. Congratulations, you learned my path. Now I have to change it, but you won. But you did win. You did overcome this. Right. And that's the point, right? It's things like that, like reoccurring puzzles, reoccurring challenges can also be a way to reinforce the development that players and their characters have made.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's very cool. I think it allows for a lot more collaboration in the gameplay rather than just, feeling like you're along for the ride.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Because especially, it's like it can work with any kind of player. The roleplay people enjoy it. Even the min-maxers enjoy it, because if a min-maxer is constantly min-maxing and constantly almost being beaten, they, it's either they're going to feel in competition with you that they can't outthink you, or they're just going to feel like, it doesn't matter how good they make their character, you're not going to let them be overpowered.
Right.
And yeah, you don't want them to be overpowered in every situation, but give it to them once in a while. Give it to them once in a while, man. That's all I'm saying.
I like it. Indeed.
All right. Well, that is bringing us to almost the 4th hour. So
fourth hour?
We are at 3:50 right now.
Holy mackerel. All right.
This is why I'm liking Fridays. Fridays, it's so much easier. We don't even have to pay attention to the clock. It's kind of just a chill conversation.
I'm here for
so we are good. So I think we are going to call it there. We thank everybody in chat for joining us. If you were watching this on YouTube and you do want to join the chat in the future, come join us on Twitch. If you missed anything on this one, or if you liked what you saw and want to see any of our other prior streams, you can catch us on YouTube at MisfitGamersStudios, where I have all of our other D&D discussions, as well as any pop-up games that I do over the weekends. If you do like D&D discussions and you're new here, you can see us live every Monday and Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Mondays, 7:30 Pacific Standard Time now on Fridays. And then on the weekends, I randomly do pop-up games where I'll do roleplay, DBD, pretty much anything that suits my fancy on the weekends. But otherwise, D&D discussions will be back on Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we will probably... I don't have a current homebrew review submitted. Mondays are homebrew review, if you haven't been here before, where we have a viewer-submitted item, whether it's a weapon, piece of armor, spell, something that they've created for their own campaign, and then we'll review it, see what we think about it, give initial impressions, maybe give some examples of what we might do with it, and then we'll give it a rating based on how much we would like to see it in our own setting. But yeah, join us for that if that sounds fun. Kage's here every Monday with me, and then occasionally every Friday now. But yeah, that's pretty much us. You can catch us on YouTube. Otherwise, we will see you all on Monday. I hope you have a great weekend.
Definitely. Deuces, my friends.